Moshe, we're good? Welcome. Good morning, everybody. Welcome on a Freilich Erev Shabbos. Okay. Beautiful. Okay. So we're at Shir number 8, I believe, of the Basi Legani Maimer Tavshin Chafhei. We're in the middle of Ois Daled. In this contrast, it's page Tez Zayin. The paragraph starts, V'yuvan al pi hadugma shehuva alza. V'yuvan al pi hadugma shehuva alza. Okay, just to remind everybody, Be'ezer Hashem Mitzay Shabbos, there'll be a big Fabreng in here. And I'm going to have a Sudus Malava Malka, 24 Shea upstairs, in honor of Yud Shvat. And it's going to begin 8:30. Be hot food and music and inspiration. Ben Shimon, yeah. And there'll also be a live stream for those who can't be here physically at 9 p.m. streamed on the yeshiva.net, www.theyeshiva.net. And everybody's invited. Okay. So this series, these Maimorim are dedicated in loving memory, Leilu Nishmas, Harav Agon, Rav Chassid Reb Shnei Chaim HaKoyen Gutnik, Ben Rav Agon, Rav Chassid Reb Mordechai Ze'ev HaKoyen Gutnik, Tehei Nishmasam Tzura B'Tzer HaChaim, great rabbinic figures. May their memory be a source of light and inspiration for their families and all of the Jewish people. It's also dedicated by our dear friend Reb Ezra David Philip in honor of the one who said this Maimer, the Rebbe and his Shluchim, for creating a revolution, a spiritual revolution, to help bring Mashiach Tzidkenu now. Amen, Ken Yehi Ratzon, even before Shabbos. So, to summarize what we learned yesterday, yesterday was a very, very, very long shiur. I could have used a little tzimtzum. So the main point, and if you didn't hear it, it's kedai to hear it because it's all one big build-up that builds one on the other. And if you heard it, you can also do chazara. It's deep stuff. And that the nekuda was that when we speak about tzimtzum, it's always legabeinu. It's talking about our experience. As he put it, legabe Hashem, when you say legabe Hashem, it doesn't just mean if you put on different glasses, it's like you have your perspective, I have my perspective, like a 6 and a 9. If you look at it from one angle, it's a 6. If you look at it from another angle, it's a 9. When we say legabe us, legabe Hashem, it doesn't just mean everybody has different perspectives. Legabe Hashem means when you understand the true reality of the tzimtzum, when you don't look at it only at face value, meaning face value from the initial, intuitive, experiential perspective, but as we work through it, the divine perspective, which means the ultimate truth of it is, the ultimate reality of it is, as he puts it, that the tzimtzum is not master. What we're calling a tzimtzum is not really a tzimtzum. It doesn't conceal, it doesn't eclipse, it doesn't accomplish what it's supposed to accomplish. But it does, because it's a tzimtzum. If you want to say that it's not real, just say it's not real. We're not saying it's not real. We're saying it's not master, doesn't conceal. As he puts it, he's mayor, post tzimtzum like before tzimtzum. The light shines after the tzimtzum exactly like before the tzimtzum. So now you'll say, so what is it? So it's a joke? So it's not a joke, obviously. But something is being said here. And that's what we say in davening every morning. Atuhu koydem shenivra olam. Atuhu mishenivra olam, or atuhu la'achar shenivra olam. Right after the first Shema that we say in Karbonis, we say atuhu koydem shenivra, atuhu la'achar, atuhu mishenivra. So it doesn't only mean you were always there. He could have said you're forever, you're eternal, like we say in Baruch Shamar. Chayla ad, you live forever. You're there before, you're there after, you're there in the middle. What he's saying here is something much deeper. The zelbahu, the same he, the same state of pre is also post. Or in other words, the fabric of reality that existed pre-creation. And of course, I just used paradoxical words because the fabric of reality didn't exist before creation. But I have no other way of talking about it, so I'm using those words. As I always say, words are containers, they're part of tzimtzum. Bereishis bara lekim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz mean oisius, the oisius. Even when we talk about pre-tzimtzum, it's through the filter of tzimtzum, of course. But that itself is the whole avodah, right? To talk about pre-tzimtzum through the filter of tzimtzum. So the fabric of reality before creation existed, and before doesn't mean in time. Before means before there was a before, which means it always exists on a dimension beyond time. Because everything in our world has at least 4 dimensions. There's the length, and there's the width, and there's the depth. And today we know there's also time. Time is a dimension of matter. Bereshis bara lekim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. The Bereshis is part of Shamayim and part of Aretz. The beginning, time, is part of matter and part of space. Time, space, and matter. Eretz is matter, Shamayim is space, Bereshis is time. But in the reality that's pre that reality, meaning in a deeper level, a deeper state of reality. So that's atohu kaidem shenivra olam. That who, that's why it says the word who. It could have said ata kaidem shenivra olam, ata lacha shenivra olam, ata kaidem, ata mishenivra olam. You want to say atohu, the same he that is there before is thereafter. What do you mean? It's not. Before he had exclusive rights. Afterwards, yeah. Other people also exist. The world exists. President Trump exists. You exist. I exist. Spiritual worlds, physical worlds. Even if you say everything is an illusion, illusions also are in existence. Pre-creation, there was no illusion. So that itself is a shinui, that itself is a change. You can't say it's the same oneness. And certainly Yiddishkeit doesn't say it's an illusion. Even if it was, you still have the question. As I said yesterday, Bereshis bara elikim is the opening of Torah, which is Torah's emes. God created the heaven and earth. That's quite a change. To go from a place of Ein Od Milvado, of infinite, undefined oneness, to a place of heaven and earth being created with everything contained in it, and all of the action in our universe, beginning with creation until this very day, is quite a significant alteration. It's quite a significant metamorphosis and shinui, change. And this is the chiddush of what he's saying, that the tzimtzum is not master. The same oir pre-tzimtzum, that Arizal says that oir was mamali kol ha-metzias, it filled all metzias. And there was no makayim, there was no space for metzias, because that was the only metzias, that oir. So legabe Hashem, that oir is still made after the tzimtzum. And that's why we say, Ani Hashem lo shanisi. I haven't changed, which doesn't only mean I haven't changed, I haven't gotten older or weaker. Everybody changes with time because we're under the tyranny and the influence of time. So who I was yesterday is not who I am today, because time passes. Rabbeinu Bechaya writes, that a person starts dying the moment they're born. The process of what we call entropy principle. Decline begins the moment of creation, because that is the fabric of its creation. It's something in time. So the moment you're created, it's the beginning of the end. That's what Rabbi Bachaya writes. And we could all understand it. Yeah. Lahavdil, your car begins to die the moment you start driving it. The copy machine starts to break the moment you make the first copy. It'll take a few months. If you really got a good company, it'll take a few days. Maybe it'll take a few years if you're lucky. But it already started. Why? Because its entire existence is within the realm of entropy. It begins to decline. You started to use it. It's a cycle of life. You started to deplete the energy. It takes some time, but that's the vart. So you're not just saying that Ni Hashem lo shanisi, I'm beyond that. I'm not getting old, I'm not getting tired, I'm not getting exhausted. Ani Hashem lo shanisi, Chassidus teaches, lo shanisi means that the Ani Hashem, the state of Ani Hashem, that state of Ani Hashem, the eye of Hashem, the true eye of reality, is lo shanisi, even with the Bria, with the creation. On this, the Mittler Rebbe explains in Shara Yichud, this was the main shear. L'chayre, that doesn't seem to even make sense. And for this he explained the whole concept of Ur versus Shefa. That in Kabbalah, the divine energy that creates all the worlds is called Ur, not Shefa. That was one beer. And even deeper, that Ur itself goes through a tzimtzum. And because it goes through a tzimtzum, this was the main discussion, that was the chiddush, that the tzimtzum is really here to explain not the distance but the oneness. That because the Ur goes through a tzimtzum, and the tzimtzum is not kipshutai, so the entire creation of what we call the change happens only because of the absence of life. And since the absence of light, and since that absence is only perceived, so the moment you're in touch with reality, it's the same Ani Hashem lo shanisi like before creation. So the first thing is, in Etzem there's Bechlal no Tzimtzum, only in Ur, and even the Tzimtzum in Ur is a Tzimtzum called B'derech Siluk, meaning it was completely removed, but it's like Pshuta. And because of this idea of Tzimtzum, so as a result of that, you can understand that Ani Hashem, the true Ani, both in the Etzem and even the Ur is lo shanisi. That's basically what we learned. I know that it's abstract, but that was the discussion. Now he discusses this in two major stages. And he starts with a metaphor. He starts with a metaphor with two illustrations. So let's see inside. For Yuvan, this will all be understood al pi hadugma shehu valza, based on an example that's brought for this, and this example is in Likutei Torah and Parshas Nitzavim. The Alter Rebbe writes, the Alter Rebbe says, Dehine nishmas Moshe Rabbeinu oisim b'chinas Atzilus. The soul of Moshe Rabbeinu comes from a state we call Olam HaAtzilus, the world of Atzilus. We all know one of the fundamental ideas in Kabbalah is that there are many different worlds, universes, parallel universes, but basically we speak of four: Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asiya. What do we mean by the four worlds? We don't just mean four different universes that exist in places spiritually or physically. The four universes evolve from each other, which means every universe is really a mirror, a reflection of the higher universe, but the energy is more concretized. It's incarnated and it's concretized, meaning it becomes melubish in more concrete terms. So Atzilus is the world of pure divine oneness and energy. So in Atzilus you also have apples and oranges, and mountains and oceans and rivers and trees and stars and planets and galaxies and cells and neurons and matter. But in Atzilus, it's all Olam HaAchdus. It's all just a manifestation of pure divine energy. And then you have the world of Bria, is creation, and then Yitzira is formation. And then the world of Asiya is the world of action, which is considered our world. In Asiya itself, you have the spiritual world of Asiya and the physical world of Asiya. We live in the physical world of Asiya. And here, all the divine energy assumes physical properties. You could talk about a physical tree and a physical deer and a physical squirrel and a physical mountain and a physical forest and a physical rock or grain of sand or flake of snow or drop of water. And it's all physical. That's Olam Asiyah. That's the world we live in. When you speak about the full world, you're not, again, talking about four different things. It's like when you have a telescope and you look at the very same physical reality, the telescope shows you a deeper dimension of this reality. It's not a contradiction. It's both true. When I see a table on one level, all I could see is solid. When you go deeper and you see what it's actually made up of, you have a whole different universe. It's not a contradiction. You're just seeing through the external facade into what is the underlying makeup of it. The building blocks of matter, for example, are molecules. And every molecule is a compound of atoms. And every atom is made up of subatomic particles. You have protons and neutrons and electrons, right? And that makes up one atom. And the atoms come together to form what we call molecules. And that's the building blocks of matter. But I could only see the external side of matter. I don't see all of that. Because our eyes only could be typhus, can grasp what they can grasp, their version of reality, which is a true version. But it's on one level it's true. On a deeper level, it's very limited. Yeah, that's clear. This is a mashal to understand the worlds. It's the same reality, but what do you see in the reality? So there's Asiyah, there's Yitzirah, there's Bria, there's Atzilus. That's basically the concept of the four worlds. Very, very concise. Every soul comes from Atzilus. Neshama Elokai, Neshama Shanasata Bi Tahirihi. Then is Barasa, then is Yatzarta, then is Nafachta Bi. That Rabbi explains in Look at the Torah. Tahir is Atzilus. Barasa is Bria, Yitzarta is Yitzira, Nafachta Bi is you blew it into me. It's the way the Neshama comes in, lands in Asiyah. And it has to go through that process. Because if not, it would never be able to live in this world, in the consciousness of the body and give it life and be part of it. So it goes through a whole hishtalshlus, a whole evolutionary spiritual process. And that's why we speak about the neshama being pure before talking about the fact that it was created. L'cha'ira, it should have said, L'kai neshama shanasata bi ata barasa, you created it. And then tell me that it's pure, right? That would make much more sense. You created it. And now describe it to me. We don't do that. We say, L'kai neshama shanasata bi tahirihi. It's pure. Oh, by the way, you created it. To put it simply, it can't be pure before it was created. It's Alter Rebbe's question in Likud Torah. So what's his answer? It's half a the answer. Because Tahira is higher than Ata Barasa. Tahira is not, the Neshama is not a Bria. The Neshama in Atzilus is Chelik Elakami Mal Mamish. So it's not Bria, it's Tahira. Tahira, by the way, in Aramaic doesn't only mean pure, it means light. In Aramaic, Tehiru is light. Tehiru Ilah is the highest light. So Tahira means it's light, it's divine light, it's divine illumination. It's like a reflection of the source. Then it goes into a place of Bria. It's an entity. You can say you created it. That's Olam HaBria. Olam HaBria is already not Atzilus. It's already a descent. And then there's a Yitzarta. And then there's Nafachta Bi. And now there's the avoid of Ata B'Shamra B'Kirbi. You got to keep the soul in place because it has a very hard time in this crazy world. It's like, get me out of this place. Ratzoi, you need a shoiv. Ata B'Shamra B'Kirbi is, it needs a shomer. The neshama needs a protection to be able to make peace with this world. That's what he says in the, we learned it also right in a previous Maimon Torah. And then there's V'ata Asid Litlam Imeni, and then there's Lachzira Bila Asid Lava. No, not that Maimon. It's a different Maimon. Likud Torah Hazinu, we once learned, another Maimonim yet. But this is a very big word from the Alter Rebbe. He says it a few times about Tahira and Berasa. Now, most souls, even though they originate in Atzilus, it's like physically, in Tanya he gives a metaphor, every soul, every person, every body originates in the seed and in the egg of father and mother. Because the way Hashem created nature is that the tipa, which is called the seed, the sperm, has to meet the egg. But for that to happen, it's a miraculous process. Because you have, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 300 million sperms that go searching for the egg, and only one makes it. And it has to go through crazy process until it meets that egg, and there's conception. And after conception, it could develop into what's called a zygote, which develops into an embryo, which develops into a fetus, which develops into a child, a life, a child, a living organism. What a journey, yeah. What a journey. Incredible journey. So in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says, that whole physical, biological process is a reflection of the spiritual process of the soul coming into the body. Now that process of the development, so where does every child begin? Every child begins within the body of the father and the mother. But if the child if it would just remain as an egg or as a seed, you don't have a child. Even though that's the source. You need a whole process. And even after they come together and they become a zygote, that's not a child, it's not viable. And even after a fetus, right? And even if a fetus is born later, but it's it's premature, it's not so easy to survive. So it has to go through an entire process until the seed and the egg go through who knows what until it's fully developed. And now you could finally be an independent living organism, hopefully based on Hashem. And it's a miraculous, supernatural process. It's abnormal. Anybody who studies the development of it, for it to happen randomly is simply inconceivable. It's mind-staggering how many factors have to come together. Just each factor itself, if you would have to master it and study it, could take 200 years to understand and to master it. Never mind to get it all together, and we're dealing with seconds. So Alter Rebbe gives a mashal that the neshama in its source, it's like the seed. The seed is in the Father. It's all part of the Father. You don't look at yourself and say, it's all part of the Father. On the other hand, the fetus is separate from you. So that's the paradox of a fetus. On one hand, your child is you, and at one point, they were indivisible. At another point, and then they continue to remain in the womb of the mother. The Gemara says, Uber Yerechim, and the other point, the child becomes independent. And we all know as parents, it's a little bit of a paradox, because when you look at your child, who are you looking at? Especially for a Yiddish mama. On one hand, she's looking at someone who's separate, but on the other hand, she's looking at herself. Right? That's why it's space for children is a very sensitive issue. Because come on, you're like me. You're even more me than me. You're more me than me. I'll make decisions about me that are stupid, but for you, I'm going to make only wise decisions. In other words, you touch a deeper chord in me than I touch in me. But on the other hand, for them to grow up, they need space. They have to be their own people. This is not an easy thing for parents. It's a deep. It's a deep metamorphosis that people have to go through. The concept of you loved something that was you, but now you have to love something that's not you. But it is you. Yeah, and the person could do things that you don't agree with, and it's not your style, and it's not that making peace with that your children are not you, is not an easy process, at least for many of us, because it takes both. You could detach and okay, you're not mine, we know that people do that, but we're talking about to be able to remain a parent in full intensity of a parent while understanding that this boy is not 1 year old anymore and he's not in the womb of your wife. That's a process. So this is all a metaphor of the neshama. There's the way the neshama is a chelik elokami mal in Atzilus. What's Atzilus? Atzilus is the world of complete oneness. But then it goes through Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya. Comes the Alter Rebbe and he says, but some souls remain in Atzilus. What do you mean remain in Atzilus? Even though they go through the process, they still retain all the properties and personality features and identity of Elam Atzilus. And that was the neshama of Moshe. Most souls, it's like if you don't remain the seed and the egg, you can't. You have to become something else. You have to become something that becomes separate from the mother to the point that she says, okay, goodbye. Yeah. The difference is every neshama is rooted, like every child is rooted in that space. But Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama, he says, "Haisim b'chinas Atzilus." What does it mean, Haisim b'chinas Atzilus? So he says, "V'hainu shaya meir by Atzilus b'chinas gilui lamata." Harshenim segam lamata b'chinas Atzilus. That means even as he was down here walking, it was Atzilus embodied. Moshe was an embodiment of Elam Atzilus. In other words, the same consciousness, the same state of consciousness of Olam Atzilus, which is the Olam of Achdus, the Olam of pure oneness, that consciousness exists in Moshe's neshama even when it comes down. It never left Olam Atzilus. Yeah. So what do we see from here? That there's the concept that Atzilus is here. When Moshe is talking to Paroi, it's Atzilus talking to Shalosh Lipas Atmayas. Mitzad the light of Atzilus itself, there's nothing preventing it. She'ilu hoya, this is Alter Rebbe's language. She'ilu hoya Moshe gam hayoim poyi manu hoya oira Atzilus mizgalabai. If Moshe was here with us today physically, the light of Atzilus would shine through him, would be manifested through him. In this generation, Alter Rebbe says, we don't have the Gili of Atzilus in an embodied way because Moshe Rabbeinu is not here. So it doesn't mean Atzilus is not here. Atzilus is here. We just don't have the vessel that's embodying it, that's manifesting it physically. Right? An example would be, again, a remote example, would be electricity. When Alter Rebbe wrote this Maimon, they didn't know about electricity. Electricity is a koyach that existed in the universe from the moment of 6 days of creation. It existed. Electrons always existed. You don't have a world without it. But we had no access to it. What does it mean we had no access to it? Doesn't mean now electricity is here more than it was there. Now we just created the vessels, the kalim, to access it, to contain it, to make it functional, to make it productive, to make it useful. So that you can have a refrigerator, and you can have a computer, and you can have a phone, and you can have a mic, fueled by electrons, by electricity. And if you unplug the refrigerator, electricity doesn't disappear from the universe. It's just not being channeled to the refrigerator. That's what it is. Understand? If you don't pay the bill either, yeah. When they say they cut your electricity, they can't destroy the electricity. They cut the electricity means it's not being channeled through to your home. Your wires are not accessing it. That's what it means to cut the wire or unplug it. So he says here, that's the pshat. Alter Rebbe says, if Moshe was here, Atzilus would flow through him. You don't have a Moshe. So Atzilus is not flowing through him. So it's not that Olam Atzilus is not here. So this is also Atzilus. It's just the prism. You need the prism to be able to experience that light. All the kaiches, you talk about the World Wide Web, right? The computer revolution, the supercomputer revolution, the internet revolution. The kaich of internet, it didn't happen in 1994. It's not when it happened. The moment of Sheshis and Mebereshes. It took 5,700 and somewhat years. What is it? Tavshin Nun Dalet. 5,754 years until it exploded. In order to be able for us to have the kalim to access this. And the same is true a generation ago with telegraph and telegrams, right? You're radio, television. You're accessing sound waves. Sound waves weren't created in the late 1800s. That's not when sound waves were introduced into the planet, to the cosmos. Sound waves existed the moment the first sound was uttered. But we didn't have there was no, I'm using it as a mashal, of course, because this is more physical stuff. But there was no Moshe Rabbeinu, there was nothing to embody it, to access it, to do anything with it. So it remains, but as far as we're concerned, it doesn't exist. If you would have spoken to somebody about sound waves 200 years ago, they would say you're a certified nut job. The same is true with everything. X-rays, gamma rays, even infections, bacteria, germs, viruses, they didn't exist. You think germs didn't exist, bacteria didn't exist? There was a black plague in the 14th century that killed like a quarter of Europe. They, of course, blamed the Jews, that the Jews poisoned the wells. The Jews poisoned the wells. It's not like viruses, of course, germs and bacteria infections, but they simply didn't have the tools to be able to see any of that, so it didn't exist. If I don't have the tools to see it, what do I say? I say it doesn't exist. That's what we do. The brain doesn't say it exists, but I don't know what it is. That's not what the brain does. The brain likes control. So the brain says it doesn't exist. until it hits you in the face that it does exist. Today we know that which is invisible exists in a much more powerful way than that which is visible. The most forceful powers in our world are not things you see, it's things you don't see, even in your own body. So it's the contrary. The fact that you see it usually means that it doesn't exist too much. It's a very, very condensed form of existence. The ultimate, the deepest powers are powers that we don't see. That's why they're deep, because they're beyond what our eye can grasp.
That's why they say when you take a picture of something, the less real it is, the more you can enhance it and make. But you know, you have sometimes a picture of nature that will never do justice because there's no way to.
Yeah. So these are all mishalim that you have an energy, you have a presence, but if you don't have the tools to be able to be toifus it, to detect it, first of all to detect that it exists, and to channel it and make it useful, as far as we're concerned, we say it's not here. So that's the Alter Rebbe is what he's saying about Moshe, that the fact that Moshe was Atzilus, it means Atzilus is not up there, it means Atzilus is here. Because Moshe Rabbeinu ate food, and Moshe Rabbeinu walked the streets of Egypt, and Moshe Rabbeinu had a physical body and physical arms and physical legs, and Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to Paro. So what do you mean he was Olam Atzilus? What does that mean? That means that Olam Atzilus is a frequency. It's a state of consciousness that doesn't exclude the physical world. It's what you see in the blade of grass, and what you see in the fish, and what you see in the bird, and what you see in your own arm and leg. That's what it is. Yeah.
So there's a way, if let's say somebody is there's certain Kabbalas how you can teach, you can have Tzilas yourself, or it's only.
Everyone has. But the question is, how much access do I have to it? Every neshama is Olam from Olam Atzilus. How you access this in yourself. Huh? The Rebbe is Chavdala Tevis. Yud Shvat is the Rebbe Rayatz, the Friedik Rebbe. Al derech zeh b'negei linyan hanavua. This is also true. The Alter Rebbe says about prophecy. Sh'af al pi shemeshachar Beis Hamikdash batla nevuah. Our sages tell us when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, generally nevuah ceased. The great era of prophecy ceased after the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash. Mikol makayim yesh mitzias nevuah gam b'olam hazeh. What does that mean? It doesn't mean there's no nevuah. It doesn't mean there's no prophecy. Prophecy exists in this world too. It's just if my antennas are not working, so then I hear static. So the issue is how clear, how transparent are your antennas that can detect prophecy. Mitzad the light and the flow, there's no prevention. There's no blockage. The whole light of prophecy is there today. What can be manifested and visible and detected and embodied is based on the capacity of those who receive it. So that's the question, how refined are your antennas? What can your ears pick up? What can your eyes perceive? What is your brain open to? And this is such a powerful idea because all growth is happening in the Kayach HaMekabel. It's all about refining the antenna. You don't have to create any light. It's all there. It's simply removing the static. You know, if I'm a channel, but the channel is filled with dirt and debris and guilt and shame and this, nothing is coming through. Not because the electricity is not there. It's all there. But there's no way to access it. I can't hear it. That's why, can there be a Navi? The Gemara says, after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, batla nevuah. But the Gemara doesn's mean there's no nevuah. There's a Tosfos in Maseches Gittin, Daf Peches. I think it's Daf Peches. One of the Balei Tosfos he calls Reb Ezra Hanavi. The Rambam writes in Igeres Tema, Tachzer Hanavuah Yisrael. Before Mashiach comes, prophecy will return to the Jewish people. In the beginning of Bayesheni, you had still Nevi'im, Chagai, Schaya, Malachi. The Gemara says, Esther Tzov's man Nevuah. So you literally say after that there's nothing. The Alter Rebbe says that's not the word. It's not that there's no nevuah. It means that if you had the proper keli, the nevuah is there. Like he says, if you have Moshe Rabbeinu, Atzilus is right here because it's here. It's here. Yeah, this is a dogma to begin to explain the Tzimtzum Shalai Kipshuta. What it really means, that the Oid is not master. That's the dogma that he's trying to bring. It's Einu Nida V'Nigla Elel Fiyarach Koyach HaMakablam.
It's a dogma not as a mushroom. It's a dogma as what's the...
Yeah. This is not just a mushal, like a remote mushal. It actually brings out the point itself. Yeah. It brings out the point itself. He's using here, the reason he calls it an example is because he's talking about prophecy and he's talking about Atzilus, which are post-Tzimtzum. But it's illustrating the same idea in the Ursha Lifnei HaTzimtzum. That's why he calls it a dugma. You understand? Because Atzilus and Nevuah are both post-Tzimtzum. There's a metaphor I once heard. It's a beautiful, very insightful metaphor. I think it's attributed to Heisenberg. Heisenberg had a very famous argument with Professor Einstein about what they call today quantum mechanics, which is a branch of physics, a dimension of physics that Einstein couldn't wrap his brain around and felt was ridiculous. There's a famous line from him: God does not play dice with the universe. Einstein's line. So I once heard, or I think I heard it from somebody, that I think it's Heisenberg, once gave a metaphor to bring out the limits of Einstein's science. And it was a very profound metaphor. There was a fisherman who wanted to determine the size of fish that existed in, say, the Pacific Ocean or the Caribbean Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean. So he builds this supermassive Titanic, pun intended, net, and he lowers it into the ocean, into the waters for a long time. And then he lifts it up, and indeed the net has caught an enormous amounts of fish and different species of fish, maybe hundreds or thousands of species of fish in this metaphor. And then he comes out with a declaration to the world that there's no fish smaller, in this ocean there are no fish that are smaller than 10 inches. Now, it's a joke of the century, because anybody who goes snorkeling for 5 minutes sees that there are many fish that are smaller than 10 inches. In fact, in your own fish tank, in your dining room, you have fish that are smaller than 10 inches. And then they discovered why he said that. He wasn't lying. You know why he said that? Because the holes in the net were 10 inches. And since the holes in the net were 10 inches, he was right. There were no fish that are smaller than 10 inches. In this ocean, there are no fish that are smaller than 10 inches. And what Heisenberg said was this, or I'm using my words, but this was the point. The tools that you use to define reality will determine the reality that you discover through those tools. And in your mind, that is reality. You're not lying, you're not fooling anybody, you're not trying to be deceptive, you're not dishonest, you're as honest as they come. What you fail to understand is that your tools are limited, and they are the only way through which you're defining your reality, and your reality will conform to those tools. And in your mind, that is the beginning and the end of reality. When say there's a whole other reality that you're simply not accessing because you don't have the courage to question the tools you're using. Now, how true is this in life? What is prophecy? Prophecy simply means, I heard once a speaker get up and it was very noisy. It was a Jewish crowd. So he says, I'm hearing voices and I'm not a prophet. Okay? We look at prophets, a guy hearing voices. They used to call it in Tanakh, a Navi is called a Meshuggah. A Meshuggah. Why? It's a very powerful description, because you look at the Navi and you say, I'm a Meshuggah. Yeah, he's diagnosed with mental illness. He's hearing voices. He's dangerous. Yeah. So what makes what's the difference? Nevuah is here. The question is, what is the net that I'm using? I'm convinced that there's no fish smaller than 10 inches, and I'm right. I never think Maybe my entire net is flawed. And the same is true with everything in life. I'm using my brain to figure you out. I'm using my brain to figure out my children, myself, my wife, my friends, God, reality, life. Fine, I get it. But did you ever ask what are the tools you're using? And can those tools really detect the reality? No, they can detect what fits into their reality. And we don't go with that. We don't question the net. The net is absolutely true, but maybe not. Maybe your problem is not the fish. Maybe your problem is your net. It takes a lot of courage to say, whoa, what net am I using to determine reality? This is true in every area of life. And that's the point that's being made here. So what does Nevuah look like? Nevuah simply means that your consciousness is picking up a certain frequency of energy. Not just a certain frequency, it's picking up the deeper divine frequency of energy. Yeah, you have a finer net. Moshe Rabbeinu was a keli that the flow of Atzilus, which means the world in its deepest divine reality, flowed through him. Like it says, Shchina medaberes mitoich groinei. When Moshe spoke, he said, I will give you rain. How can a human being say, I will give you rain? The answer is, it says in Sifri, because Shchina medaberes mitoich groinei. The Shchina spoke through his throat. What does it mean the Shechina spoke through his throat? I'm giving you rain, Moshe Rabbeinu. The answer is, who's Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu was a channel for the divine flow. So he says, I'm giving you rain, because the eye of Moshe is the ultimate eye, the eye of the divine. And this is the concept of Nevuah too. So it's not that there's no Nevuah, it's gone. That's not the Vart. The Vart is, if you create the proper net, you'll get the proper fish. You'll get many more species of fish. All the discoveries happened because humanity learned to refine their net, to expand their thinking. And usually that comes with saying goodbye to the old. Because if my net I inherited for generations, and this is my Messiah, I'm not giving up my net so easily. There was a scientist who said very cynically but profoundly, I think it was Max Planck, he said, science progresses one funeral at a time. You hear? And it's not just physically, the old guard has to die. It's also in the person themselves. Sheva Yipol Tzadik V'Kam. It's usually, yeah. That's why so many times it happens by mistake. You have to put to rest old beliefs, old faiths. Oh yeah. A similar thing, yeah. Yeah, the Rabbi used to tell a story of an old Maisa that in Chelm, they heard about this train, the locomotive and the train. So the Jews of Chelm had a meeting, a summit, and they decided that it's fiction. Because without a horse, you can't schlep wagons. There's no such a thing. You need a horse. So they wanted to know which Jewish crook is behind this invention of trains. And they sent a delegation to go uncover the horse inside the train. And they sent a delegation and they searched the whole night when nobody was there before the voyage, the maiden voyage of the locomotive to look for the fare, to look for the horse. And they couldn't find it. So they came back and they said, this guy is such a crook. He made such a tiny horse. It's invisible. And Chelm decided that the crook that existed here is an unprecedented crook. You could conclude the story. It turns out who was the ferd? They were right. There was a ferd here. They just were looking in the wrong place. It wasn't in the locomotive. It was inside of them. A ferd bleibt a ferd. Very good. But it's a very real mashal. We're laughing because we believe that trains do exist without horses. But how many things do we make the same mistake with? We're just more sophisticated because we're living in 2025. So our vocabulary expanded. We have a word for train, and we have a word for a plane, and we have a word for a boat, and we even have a word for a computer, and we have a word for internet, and we have a word for DNA. So we have a larger vocabulary. But in the concept, it's words. And when I'm hitting against that brick wall, to be able to say, maybe the instrument you're using is completely flawed. And that instrument doesn't mean a hammer. That instrument means my consciousness, my brain, my emotions, my instincts, my approaches. To be able to challenge that takes a lot of courage, a lot of deep courage. And that's why Chachma is Koyach Ma. Koyach Ma means say what? Just say what? Could you say what? Ich weiß nicht. Lo yadati, I don't know. Svas lo yadati. What? The question what? Don't say there's a horse. Maybe there's a horse. Maybe there's no horse. Now we can understand them. Chelab never understood there's something called electricity. Or there's something that's being fueled by steam. The fuel. They didn't know about this. So what do you want? So everything has to go back into that net. There's no horse. It's a small horse. But that's it. There's always a horse.
They do call it horsepower, though.
That's true. Horsepower. That comes from Chelam. Very good. You're saying Chelam prevailed. We call it horsepower. From that meeting in Chelam, they gave the name horsepower. I'm just joking. I'm just like the joke about Lord and Taylor. There's the Chabad Shliach in Prague. His name is Rabbi Manes Barash. So years ago, I heard from him that there was an old Shamish who worked in the Alt Shul. The Alt Shul is the shul from the Maharal. The tradition has it that the Goylem is on the attic. So he told me that when he came to Prague, a lot of tourists come to Prague, and everybody comes to the shul and they ask him, "Where's the Goylem? Where's the Goylem?" So he said he had a line for everybody. He said, "The Zich the Goylem, kick and spiegel." You're looking for the Goylem, look in the mirror. Like this was his sacred traditional line. Look in the mirror, you'll find the Goylem. Right? So the people of Chelam were looking for the fair, they're looking for the horse. They just had to look in the mirror. When the Baal Shem Tov says that what we see in somebody else is a mirror, people who live with more emotional awareness could see how powerful that is. It's not it's a cute line, it's good for psychology, it's good for certain people doing therapy work. The Baal Shem Tov was describing the true nature of reality. What I'm seeing is a mirror. What I'm seeing more than anything else is something inside of myself. It doesn't mean that Baal Shem Tov was saying that you should deny the facts that you're seeing. But to be able to be curious, what triggered me in this way? What is the belief system that I'm holding on to that's being triggered in such a powerful way as a result of seeing this reality? And then it becomes such a useful tool for growth. So that's the whole nekuda here. That when Moshe speaking to Parai, I remember the Rebbe once said it of when Moshe speaks to Parai, he gave a scream. Atzilus ret mit shalosh klippos hatmayas. Atzilus is communicating with the three unpure klippos of Parai. It's direct. So the whole Kabbalah Chassidus talks about that we live in Olam Asiyah, we don't live in Olam Atzilus. Olam Atzilus is completely different. Even Gan Eden is not Atzilus. Gan Eden Atachten is Yitzirah, Gan Eden Elyon is Bria, the higher Gan Eden is not Atzilus. The Neshamas of Atzilus are unique. It's even about the Rambam, that the Rambam was a Neshama of Bria. In Kabbalah it says, the Arizal says, I think, the Rambam's Neshama is Neshama of Bria, and that's big. Neshamas of Atzilus are unique. The Neshama says about the Neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Neshama of the Avos, and the Neshama of Reb Shimon ben Yochai. Very unique souls that you call Neshamas of Atzilus. Again, every soul is from Atzilus, but every soul goes through a metamorphosis. The Alter Rebbe says here in this Maimer, if Moshe would have been here today, we would have had that. The Alter Rebbe was a Neshama of Atzilus. Yeah, Neshama Chadasha also. The Baal Shem Tov said a Neshama Chadasha. But I'm saying Neshama of Atzilus, and to say that this Atzilus is talking to Parai, that's the Chiddush here. And the same is true with prophecy. So when we speak about Nevuah, it says when Mashiach is going to come, the Rambam says even before Mashiach, prophecy is going to come back. What it really means is that as the generations progress, the antennas become more clear when we do the work. And then there's a pasuk in Yoel, Eshpech ruchi al kol basar v'nibu b'neichem u'b'nei seichem. Basically, every boy and girl is going to be a prophet. What does that mean? Every boy and girl is going to be a prophet? Because prophecy just means tuning in to the music that vibrates through the creation. There's the Dvar Hashem that vibrates through the creation. But if I'm deaf, if I plug my ears, I can't hear it. So I need to refine the Keli. So this is all the concept that the Oir completely is here. But the Mekabel needs to ask, what's preventing it? What's holding it back? And it's a very fascinating idea because, you see, emotionally it's a little counterintuitive. Emotionally you say there's no fish smaller than 10 inches. I don't go to my net. This is not what life is. What do you see in life is not about life. What you see about life is what you're capable of seeing in life. There's two people watching the same reality. There's a famous mashal from the Baal Shem Tov that brings it out very beautifully. They asked the Baal Shem Tov why he sings a lot and dances a lot. And he speaks about it a lot. And why he's so happy, why he celebrates life so much. It's a miserable world. So you know what the Baal Shem Tov answered? He gave such an interesting answer. He said that there was once, this happens often in the shtetl, and you could see it also in different towns and cities and subways, parks. He says there was once a brilliant musician who came to town. And he came into the marketplace and he started to play music. And people were enthralled by the music and in spell. He had them all in spell to the point that even unconsciously they all began to move by the rhythm of the music. You know, imagine that scene, right? Singing one of the most beautiful compositions and everybody just starts, dancing to the beat. And the whole town was mesmerized under the spell of this magnetic force of music. And one person is walking by and he sees the whole marketplace. Everybody's tanzt. They're supposed to be doing business. They're supposed to buy, sell, scream, argue, holler, yell, curse, right? Like a good, flea market. The shuk. You ever went to the shuk in Machane Yehud? Imagine suddenly see 10,000 Jews dancing. Metanz. He says, Abanda mishagoyim. Abanda, he says, you scream, bunch of crazy people. Moshe says, what was the tragedy? He was deaf. He was deaf. That's what the Baal Shem Tov said. This was his answer to what Chassidus is. This was his explanation. He says he didn't mean bad. He was right. Taka Meshuga. It's in Taka Meshuga. The net has certain size holes. He's deaf. When you're deaf, what are you doing? He couldn't hear the music. So he says, I encourage people to hear the music, to realize that they're deaf. The first thing is to realize that you're deaf, and then to try to heal it. And if you don't know you're deaf, you can't heal it either. You just say that everybody else is crazy. So you have two people. One dances through life, and one sighs through life. One krechshet, oi, oi, like a good Jew, right? Oi, 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 oi. And the other one is dancing through life. They're living in the same crazy world. One can hear the frequency of Lifnei HaTzimtzum, and one is deaf. So the Rebbe is a plan that doesn't have to do with the reality. That has to do with the antennas that I have to detect reality. And the same is true b'negei Nevu, and the same is true b'negei Moshe Rabbeinu. V'hainu shahashinui einei b'ha'or ki im bekach she'ein mi sheyuchel lekabel ha'or. He puts it brilliantly. The change is not in the light. The change is there's nobody to be mekabel there. There's nobody to embody it, to channel it. The light is there. It's waiting. Come, take it. Come, somebody, see me, take me. The music is here. But if everybody is deaf, as far as we're concerned, there's no music. This is a boring, dead place. There's no music. I don't think to maybe look into my ears, Clean out your ears. Go to the mikveh and clean out your ears. Nemara is devata, yeah. You know what devata is? Cotton. Take out the cotton. Yeah.
Everybody just walks by.
It's an incredible story. Joshua Bell. Yeah, you know the story with Joshua Bell? The Washington Post, I think. The Washington Post. It's an amazing experiment. The most famous violinist living today, or certainly one of the top, is a Jewish boy. He's not a boy anymore. He's around 50 years old, probably, maybe a little older. His name is Joshua Bell. Joshua Bell. How much does he get for a concert? I'm not now going to be like every Jew. You know, how much do you think he gets for a concert? But let's put it this way. He gets enough to buy sourdough for Shabbos. Yeah. And also, you know, the beef jerkies for the Shalom Zachar. Before the price went up. And even after the price went up. And another few Shabbosim. And maybe even, you know, a down payment for a nice house. One concert. He's a world-renowned and very talented violinist. They did an experiment. Incredible experiment. They had him dress up in regular clothes, you know, of a musician in a subway station. You know, a baseball cap, a t-shirt, pants that are torn a little bit, you know, flip-flops or Crocs or one of these, maybe barefoot, I don't know, and probably some slippers. And they had him come around 8:30 in the morning to one of the most busy subway stations in Washington, D.C., where people come to work. And it's usually people who are professionals, you know, high-class professionals, but they take the train. Traffic in Washington can be intense. You're talking about lawyers and doctors, and, you know, lower-level politicians. I mean, senators don't take the train usually, but talking about people who, you know, the State Department and politics and other professional jobs. So you're talking about people who would go to his concerts, yeah. Yeshikayach, yeah. And they wanted to see if anybody is going to stop. And he was using his violin. He has what's called a Stradivarius. Stradivarius is considered the best violin in the world. It was made by a fellow named Stradivarius, an Italian. He lived in the 1500s. And a violin that he made costs between $10 and $30 million. Doesn't cost $70 because it's a different type of music. It's called a Stradivarius. It's unique. There's only a few left in the world. Joshua Bell has one of them. It's a whole story how he got it, but that's not for this shir. It's a fascinating story. It was saved from the Nazis. But, and he took his Stradivarius down the subway, and he stood there for like 45 minutes, an hour, playing some of his most beautiful, beautiful music. The night before, he had a huge concert. It was packed, and probably to get a seat in the front row cost you $1,000 or $2,000. But here, it was all for free. And they had cameras to be able to record it. And they printed it all up. And it's one of the most, it's like sad and fascinating stories. Mamish, almost nobody stopped. The same people who would fight to get a front seat and would pay a lot of money, walked by and just went on. He made like maybe 30 cents or $1. A few people stopped for a few seconds. There was one demographic that stopped, but they were pulled away, and that's children. Children disproportionately stopped, but their parents said, you know, gotta go, school. You're gonna be late to school. They said there was one black man, he was a janitor in one of the kiosks in the subway, and he kept on staying out of the store because he was glued. It was so interesting. And what they realized was that people are not really moved by the art, they're moved by the PR around the art. It's the ad in the newspaper, it's the commercial. It's not the art, it's the hype. In other words, it's the lie. It's the frame, it's not even the art, it's the frame, it's how it's framed, it's how it, ooh, you're going to this event, a Feinschmecker. It's about being a Feinschmecker, it's not about the art. The art was there, Joshua Bell was there, you got it. They asked him what was the most painful thing. He said, when you finish the ballad and nobody applauds. The beginning of the shir and the end of the shir is identical. That was his bittul, you know. But he was wearing this old cap, a dirty, old T-shirt, torn pants. So what's there to stop for? What's there to stop for? If you appreciate music, yeah. You appreciate. You're a music connoisseur. You'd pay thousands of dollars to be in the front seat and tell your friends the next day that I go to a concerto yesterday and here it's in front of your eyes. But who's listening? This was an unbelievable experiment. And it failed. It literally failed. I mean, they gave the exact numbers. Mamash, a few people stopped. And most of them not for long. It's like very few that stopped for more than a minute, and they threw a few cents and they went further. He made like $42. Right. Yeah. But the music, and you can hear the music, it's incredible. It's the same music, but it didn't have the packaging. So what happens when you don't have the packaging? Lahavdil, I'll tell you another story on a different frequency, but it's an interesting story. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, when he became a Rebbe, didn't put on a shtreimel. As you know, he wore his fedora hat. His father-in-law did Ayat, did Ashab, all the way back to the Alter Rebbe. They wore streimels, streimlach. The Friedrich Rebbe wore a spodek, you could see in the pictures. The Rebbe didn't put it on. There were Hasidim that didn't appreciate that. What's a Rebbe without a streimel? Yeah? And so there were people who they felt something is missing. So there was a painter, a Lubavitcher artist, very talented fellow, an older chassid, and he painted a picture of the Rebbe out of Fabrengen with a streimel. I happened to see the original because I was once in a house of a Jew whose name was Reb Shmuel Isaac Popek, Zechreina Livracha. He was a big vir, he lived on President Street. And I guess he bought that painting because it was there. So I saw the original. So somebody once told me a few years ago that somebody showed the painting to the Rebbe's mother. Her name was Rebbe Tzimchana. She actually passed away that year, Tavshin Chafei, the year of this Maimer. She passed away Vav Tishne. So somebody showed her the painting. She was a Ukrainian woman. She raised the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and she was a very smart woman. Also a very emotional woman. She was a very special person. So she took a look, and it's just how a person chaps it. She said, "The Ältere suchen a Streimel, und die Junge suchen a Rebbe." The older ones are searching for a Streimel, the younger ones are searching for a Rebbe. Yeah, that's how she put it. You're searching for a Rebbe or you're searching for a Streimel, right? So, what is art without a frame? What is music without the hype around it? But the same is true, that's the nikud of everything in life. I saw yesterday, I looked it up. I was talking yesterday in the Shir how Tzimtzum Shalai Kipshute really means that you could be fully present right here, right now, you remember, at this moment, and you're in the Holy of Holies. You're in the kitchen. You're looking into the eyes of your loved one. But you're the Kayin Gadol Yom Kippur and Kodesh HaKadoshim. It's always full presence right here, right now. That's one of the most concrete translations of what it means. In other words, all the action is right here, right now. Like, don't wait for the concert. The concert is here. Tzimtzum is adin and ach. You heard the shir yesterday? Huh?
2 days ago, actually.
Oh.
This phrase.
Tzimtzum is adin and achtos, yeah. So it means full present, because if Tzimtzum Shalai Kipshute means exactly the oneness of pre-creation, this is it right now. That's what it means, Tzimtzum Shalai Kipshute. So I saw a letter. I looked it up yesterday. Oh, let me see. Of the Lubavitcher Rebbe from 1943 to a man named Rabbi Rachmiel Binyaminson. I hope it'll come up for me. And the original letter, I once told you that there's 4 opinions in Tzimtzum. So this was a letter. I'm just doing a chipus here. This was a letter, let's see. Oh, I found it. Wow, I'm excited. Okay. I put in the word ha'idra and it came up because I knew that's an uncommon word. It's a letter in the 1943, Erev Shavuos, to a Jew named Rabbi Rachmiel Binyaminson. The Lubavitcher Rebbe wasn't a Rebbe yet. This was the time of his father-in-law still. So he writes to him like this. you certainly remember your letter to me about Tzimtzum. This was back in the 30s. He wrote a letter to the Rebbe that Rav Dessler, the Michtav Melio, Rav Elio Dessler, told him that he doesn't see the argument in Tzimtzum between the Vilna Gaon and the Baal Shem Tov, and between the Mekabalim. He doesn't see, it's all the same. So the Rebbe wrote back to Rabbi Rechmiel ben Yaminson that he's very surprised because it's clear that there was a big argument, a big debate. And he explains to him the 4 shittas in Tzimtzum that we discussed. If the Tzimtzum is an Atzmos or only an Oir, and even in Oir, if the Tzimtzum is Kipshutai or not Kipshutai. And he brings 4 different opinions. So it's a few years later, he writes to Rabbi Rechmiel ben Yaminson, you certainly remember your letter to me about Tzimtzum. So he says like this. This is just one paragraph in the letter. It's an Igris Kodesh of the Lubavitcher Rebbe Chelik Aleph. He says, V'hine yizboinen Adam. A person should meditate. Lu haya nimtza b'zeh hamakim u'bozu harega itay imay mamash. If right now in the place you're in, and in the moment you are in now, the place and the moment, meaning in these circumstances right here, right now, with you, you had Ha'admor Shaloi, your Rebbe, which was also his Rebbe. Admor Hazaken, the Alter Rebbe was there. Habal Shem Tov, Ha'arizal, Rashbi, Reb Shimon Yochai Be'ez Ha'idra. The Idra is the famous gathering of Rashbi and his students when he revealed the deepest secrets of it. It's called the Idra. There was the Idra Rabbi, the Idra Zutta. So he says Rashbi was there during the Idra, not just Rashbi on a regular Wednesday, but Rashbi during the Idra. Rabbi Akiva Be'ez Darshe Be'Maisim Merkava. Rabbi Akiva was there while he was teaching Maisim Merkava. Kohen Gadol K'Maishu B'Kodesh HaKadoshim. You had there the Kohen Gadol in the Holy of Holies. V'chuli, ad Moshe Rabbeinu olav hashalom berega Matan Torah. Until Moshe at the moment of Matan Torah. Haloi loi hoyo loi shum tfisas makam u'metzias klal. How much of your ego would be present at that moment? At that moment, you wouldn't be a metzias. What says you wouldn't be a metzias? You would let go of all metzias. All ego, yeah. All ego it sees. Not intellectually, I should. We're not talking I should. That's stuck. But it would dissolve in the energy. V'hinei ba Teiras hadach comes chsidis upaska l'maskana she'ein hatzimtzum ela ba'or v'lei chas v'shalom b'mayr. That the tzimtzum is only in the oir and not chas v'shalom in the mayr. V'hamayr nimtza ata poi mamish k'mashu nimtza b'kodesh hakadoshim d'olam asiyah. And the mayr is here right now exactly as it is in the kodesh hakadoshim of the world of asiyah. Berega matan Torah al Har Sinai. The moment of matan Torah on Har Sinai ba'olam ha'atzilis. The way it is in Olam Atzilis, ba'olam Esayin Sof K'maysho Lifnei Atzimtzum Arishin K'maysho Yoydin Sof Mamalias Kol HaMetzias. And in the Olamus of infinity, the way it was before the Tzimtzum Arishin, he calls it Olamus Ha'ain Sof, the worlds of infinity, when the Yoydin Sof was Mamalias Kol HaMetzias. That's what he writes to. This is a letter. About how to live. Yeah. Now this doesn't mean, so let's just all be paralyzed. That's not the vort. Al Pitoida, you wake up in the morning, it's not about paralysis, it's about, it's awareness. It's awareness, yeah. Wir soll wissen, von wie man steht und von wem man steht. Yeah. So, what's the nekuda here? Yeah. The Kohen Gadol in Kodesh HaKadoshim, when he did it, was he present or he was busy texting? Okay, I know Yom Kippur, you're not supposed to text, but I mean textuing conceptually. Or in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, he knew this is it. Where are you going? There's nothing else. It's like, let's get this over with. Let's get it over with. Let's get what over with? What do you want to get over with? Getting over with, that's all a product of not being here because not trusting that this is it. There's my bliss is somewhere else. When I get to Miami next week, when I get to Mexico the week after, when I get to California, when I marry off the kids, when I become a billionaire, it's always next week. It's going to happen next week. You're going to become a billionaire, no question. So next week we start to live. But that's all a product of concealment. So the Baal Shem Tov said, what I'm trying to have people is, can you realize the music is right now? You could stop and start dancing. Vi lifestyle. Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev was once in Barditchev in the marketplace, and he saw people running. He said, "Vu läufst?" He says, "Man läuft nach Parnassa." You're running after Parnassa. So he said, "How do you know the Parnassa is ahead of you? And therefore you're running towards it. Maybe it's behind you and you're running away from it." That's what he answered. How do you know? Right? I'm running because it's always ahead of me. Maybe it's behind you. Maybe you're running away from it. Maybe what you need is actually stop. Maybe go backwards. Presence. It's such a powerful idea because in life we often confuse two things. We think that stress, anxiety, and pressure somehow means productivity and accomplishment. If I'm stressed and I'm anxious and I'm overwhelmed, it means I'm doing something, right? Ich bin nicht over bottle. I'm not in a Moshe of Skenim. In a Moshe of Skenim, I sit in one place and play cards. But I'm not in a Moshe of Skenim, so I'm stressed. And I'm running, ich lauf, I'm running, I'm multitasking. It almost, there's a culture that sometimes people feel, if I'm overwhelmed, it means I'm being productive. So the Butcher said, whoa. Who equated these two things? Maybe it's the exact opposite. Maybe your deepest productivity will be when you're regulated and you're actually doing one thing and you're fully present. But the system doesn't like that. It's a survival mechanism. That life, and that's what's going to accomplish. But it's not that way. Sometimes it's the exact opposite. It means I'm present nowhere. I'm not present everywhere. I'm present nowhere. Like somebody was once talking to a specific person who was considered a big Talmud Chacham. They said, "What do you say about him?" He said, "As an Amaretz in ganz Shas." He's an Amaretz in the whole Shas. And that's an accomplishment. To be an Amaretz in the whole Shas. Daf Kenan. You understand? You're everywhere, but you're nowhere. And then Amaretz in ganz Shas. A jack of all trades, a master of none, or as somebody once said, in our generation, people are reading more and more about less and less. Or as somebody once said, we know the price of everything and the value of nothing. It's all the same thing. On the deepest nekuda, this is how the Rebbe is describing what it means. What's tzimtzum shaloi kipshutai? And tzimtzum only in the moyer, tzimtzum only in the not in the moyer. What it means viscerally in a person's life. So you say, well, I'm not a Kohen Gadol, I'm not in Kodesh HaKadoshim. And certainly when you're in your kitchen, nobody treats you like a Kohen Gadol. And nobody thinks you're in Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Kohen Gadol and Kodesh HaKadoshim didn't have to take out garbage and pay the mortgage bills. But that's a tzimtzum. That's a tzimtzum line. That's not a real line. Here you see people sometimes challenge, whenever I say, Ani Hashem lo shanisi, is not talking about only Hashem, it's talking about you. Right? That was our whole shir yesterday. Rabbi Avram said, who cares if God changes? I don't care. Why put limits on God? The real lo shanisi is describing that the person who's always changing is also always connected to that which is eternal and indestructible. So you see here from this letter how he's describing Tzimtzum Shalei Kipshutai and Avodah. It's about the person's state of consciousness. Imagine you in this place and in this time, you were with the Baal Shem Tov and the Arizal and Ashbi and Rabbi Akiva and Moshe Rabbeinu, b'shas Matan Torah. So you say, but it's not Matan Torah now. Let's face it. There's no mountain, and there's no thunder, and there's no lightning, and I don't hear Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Sorry. Okay, we know about the tzimtzum. Yeah, that's called tzimtzum. The Baal Shem Tov once said that the difference of Matan Torah and after Matan Torah is, it says, Kol Gadav Lo Yosef. He says, God is beyond time. So if God spoke at Matan Torah, he never stopped. So he said the difference of Matan Torah and after Matan Torah is just that we stopped hearing it. That's the same idea. So when did Matan Torah happen? We say Matan Torah happened. We say Baruch Atah Hashem Noisen HaTorah. Noisen HaTorah is in the present. Now it's hard for us because all of our blockages don't say that. Our blockages are like, no, this is just a regular, boring morning. And I'm still have to do 100 things today. Those are the voices. Those are the normal voices. That's what he's saying. Prophecy is present. The question is, what am I detecting? Yeah.
But if a person could get out of their personal bondage and they're free from their own Mitzrayim,
yeah,
technically then they could get to the Matan Torah
Yeah.
and experience and really feel
Yeah.
if they're able to do the work and get
Yeah.
out of that personal music.
That's really what the Baal Shem Tov is saying. If I could realize how to deal with my being deaf, which is still going to be there, because we have different moments, right? Dira b'tachtaina means you're working with a tzimtzum. You start dancing to the music. And then there's no moment greater than this moment. When Matan Torah was happening, the Jews didn't say, okay, when is this over? I'm hungry. There may have been one or two. Like, what else are you looking for? Shavuos, cheesecake, right? What else are you looking for? Or when Rashbi, during the Idra, like Rashbi, it's already 10 o'clock, Madaf Shengain. There's a Shalom Zachar. Like, there's a busy day here. Where else do you want to be? Tell me. Where else is better? Where do you want to go to? You want to go to Bloomingdale's? You want to go to Costco? Wo willst du gehen? Truly grounded. There was an old Jewish woman. They asked her what she wants to do after death. So she said they should cremate her and spread her ashes in Bloomingdale's. So they said, why? She said, I want my daughters to come visit. Over there, they'll come visit. So a person runs, I run here, I run there. So that's what the Baditchev is saying. You're running to, maybe you're running away from. Like if you could just stop and go inward and remain focused and listen to your own inner music, maybe you'll accomplish infinitely more than what you'll accomplish. Again, this is not a rule that one person runs here, but the point is, you're running without really being present. And that's not called productivity. It's just called, people confuse being busy with being productive. It's not the same thing. If I'm busy, I'm productive. No, maybe you're running away from everything. You're busy for the sake of busy. Because if you're not busy, chas v'shalom, you're going to have to live with yourself, and who knows what demons are going to come up. If I'm busy, then Baruch Hashem, I can avoid everything, and I even say I'm a busy guy. I have no time for anybody or anything, including not me, my soul, my loved ones, and of course not for God. Who has time for God? I'm busy. In other words, I keep on running away from, not running towards. And that's always the question in life. Am I running away from or am I running towards? And you sometimes don't see the difference. It's two people that are running. Two people are busy. One is running away from and one is running towards. One is in a place of dveikus. Dveikus means intimacy, shivisi, connection. And that's right here, right now. It's right here, right now. The way somebody says Amen Yehesh Rabbi, somebody says Baruch Hu Baruch Shema, somebody says Amen, somebody davens, somebody learns, somebody does a mitzvah, or somebody is involved with anything they're involved in. And another person is also running, but they're running away. So that's the nekuda, that the shinui is not in the oir. The shinui is in the one that somebody is makabel the oir or not makabel the oir. Another example, this the Tzemach Tzedek brings in Derech Mitzvah Secha, there's a mitzvah Hamonas Alakus, the mitzvah of Amunah in God, in Hashem. So he gives a moide de kamashal. Hamashal me'arav shamash pelatz melishach memtin katan lefias kolosai. The metaphor of a mentor, a teacher, a rav, who humbles himself in order to share wisdom with a child based on his capacity of understanding. Like in the Maimah, Basi Legani, the Rabbi gives a metaphor of a teacher who wants to give seichel, who wants to give awareness, wisdom to the student, and he wants that the plants should ultimately be like him. In other words, the seeds that he plants should ultimately grow as tall as the original tree. So he wants to really form this student into somebody who will ultimately become like him. But for the recipient to receive and contain the wisdom, the teacher must suspend the light of his intellect completely. Because the mind and the wisdom and the way of thinking of the teacher is disproportionately aloof and removed from the capacity of the student. So if the teacher is thinking about it in his own way, he'll never be able to truly mold, inspire, enlighten, and educate the student. He won't be able to reach him. So therefore, so he needs to invent, very interesting words, he needs to invent the light of intellect that is proportionate, that is tailor-made, that is custom-made for the mind, for the brain of the student. He has to invent that type of seichel. Because if he just flows, free flow of consciousness, he loses the student. He's just expressing himself, but there's nobody there. And it may be a tinakot, maybe a child, or not a child in years, but a child in terms of, it's completely shaloi l'fiyerech. It's completely not in the same wavelength even. So it's not just, you have to maybe speak for shorter or condense it a little bit. He has to completely suspend his own way of thinking. He has to suspend his way of thinking. He's not suspending just 10%. He's suspending his entire thought process, his modalities, his paradigms. And he needs to completely imagine and envision the paradigm of the student. And it's a completely different paradigm. It's a completely different brain, it's a completely different lifestyle, different life. That takes a lot of humility.
Why the new ideas don't come up with a framework of, definitions and all the other stuff?
Why what?
Why the ideas don't come in already the forms that can be coupled to the students? Why the teacher has to invent the language and the entire framework of?
Because the original language will just lose him. He won't be able to connect. He'll just dismiss it. He'll remain in his world, you remain in your world. I mean, we see it even in our own levels. You see it with so many teachers and students. You can have a teacher who's a genius, right? And you have a teacher who's incredible and really lives in a certain place. But the students they don't relate. It's not speaking to their mind. It's not speaking to their soul. It's not speaking to their heartbeat. It's like when it's not it's also emotionally, when something is not relevant. They're not finding themselves there.
It's one thing when the student doesn't understand. I can sympathize here. What I'm talking about, the teacher cannot formulate.
Oh, because it takes that, it's Mesiras Nefesh. He has to forget everything he knows, in a way. In a way, he has to, whatever I'm thinking, it's out the window. Let's understand what we mean here. We're talking here, not stam, a teacher and a student who he's teaching and he's a student, but maybe the student is smarter than him. He's talking here, it's a metaphor of the quintessential Rav and Talmud, An example would be, let's say, the Rakachava Gon. Okay, the Rakachava Gon, it wasn't just he was a baki, he knew everything. His level of depth and awareness of things was complete. I mean, you read his Svarim, and if you usually you don't understand anything, and if you do understand, you realize how much you don't understand. It's a different magnitude of learning. It's not just he knows more. It's like what he saw. It's almost like before the X-ray and after the X-ray. It's like before the telescope and after the telescope, before the microscope and after the microscope. It's a different Indian. And if you start sharing that, I don't even know what you're talking about. I can't even relate to it. So what's the first thing the teacher has to do? The first thing, and this is true, by the way, in all communication, even on much lower levels. And this is the mistake that many communicators make. They think they're going to express themselves to the audience. That's not how you teach. It's not how you teach. The first thing you need to do is tzimtzum. The first thing I need to do is ask not how I think about it, but ask how you think about it. In other words, truly envision the paradigm, the mindset of the other person. When parents are trying to communicate to their children, what's the biggest mistake we make? I'm projecting my vision, and I expect you to tune into it. But can you really put everything aside and just be a channel and really tune into where the other person is? And you may not like it. It's not talking about, like it, but it's the reality of where the person is. That's not about my thinking anymore. In fact, my thinking is completely suspended. In a way, it's Mesiras Nefesh. You're removing your entire light. Completely everything. Why? Because if you leave any of your light there, there's no real room for the other person. Even 1%. Huh?
And we could say that you mentioned that Zevin said that when the Rabbi spoke, in a certain sense, that's where he removed them.
Yeah.
And when he wrote
Rav Zevin writes, when Jacobson spoke, a 5-year-old kid could understand, and he says it's a pity that when he wrote, nobody could understand. Even a 95-year-old can't understand.
But what you see is what he was able to.
But when he spoke, he was able to do that. You can have a Gon Oilam, right, who's teaching a Pasuk Chumash to a 5-year-old, to a 10-year-old, or a Mishnah. He knows on this Mishnah everything that's said about this Mishnah. The depth of every word, the whole Gemara, the Rishonim, the Achrayim. But if he says any of this to the child, it's all lost, it's all gone. So he now goes back to the basic, the things that he already forgot, so to speak. Meaning, it's completely, he sees it completely on a different level. But he has to suspend all the brilliance and all the dazzling depth. And just ask, what is this child capable of? And communicate that. And we're not here talking about only quantity. Like instead of giving 100%, I'm giving 5%. Instead of giving you $100, I'll give you $1. Instead of giving you $1, I'll give you a nickel. We're talking here qualitatively. And we could also appreciate it emotionally. When I'm in a conversation with you and I'm trying to be a mashpia, how much of myself is present? My expectations, my understanding, my thinking of who you are and who you're supposed to be and who you're going to be tomorrow. How much can I suspend myself, empty my channel, and just serve as a mirror? One of the hardest things in the world. Can I be a mirror for you? That means none of me can be present. Because if part of me is present, I'm not a mirror to you. I'm showing you who I am. I'm not showing you who you are. That takes a lot of humility. It takes a lot of it. It's called tzimtzum. Yeah. They may throw stones at the mirror, and I could mirror that too. I don't break. When they throw a stone in the mirror, instead of like, oh my God, get out of the room, I could mirror back to you the fact that a stone was just... The mirror is so confident in itself that even when it gets a stone, it could mirror that to you also. The mirror is not looking for your validation to tell me that I'm a good mirror. The mirror is fine. And that's the truth. The truth is, this is going to be the end of the Maimah, that the whole Koyach HaTzimtzum comes from Atzmos, who has the capacity to be non-present as much as he's present. And therefore, the concealment of tzimtzum is really the light going higher, not the light going lower. Usually, you would think, Lamata aden tachlis is tzimtzum, Lamaila aden ketz is gilu. In this Maimah, it's fakert. Lamata aden tachlis is revelation, Lamaila aden ketz is tzimtzum. Because tzimtzum is really going higher, not going lower. Because the ability to suspend all your light comes from the essential essence that doesn't have to express itself. Doesn't have to be present. Yeah, that's that whole different word. That tzimtzum is actually the going higher, not going lower. Back in this mashal, to say this mashal, to be a true mirror, even when you're throwing rocks at the mirror has to be very, very powerful. If the mirror is looking for your validation, tell me what a beautiful mirror I am. I'm a good mirror, right? I'm a good father. I'm a good therapist. I'm a good Rebbe. I'm a good, yeah? The moment you throw a rock, out! In other words, I'm not a mirror. I'm looking for your validation. When the mirror is a real mirror, essentially, in other words, it doesn't have to have light. It could suspend all of its light, all of its presence, all of its manifestation. It could just be here for you to be able to see yourself where you are so that you can grow. It shows on your own greatness that you don't need the oid, and that's what allows the other person to really live in a new place, to grow into a new place. It's one of the hardest things. By the way, for therapists, this is their real rebbes, mashpiyim, educators, parents, mentors, therapists. This is the avodah, and it's one of the hardest things. All the textbooks of psychology don't teach you this. They will teach you all about the other person. What's your sickness? What's your chronic issues? What are your pathological stuff? What's your mental illness? What's your traumas? They don't teach the main thing is, what's my traumas? Ich bin der Normaler. I trained for 29 years. No, this is very serious. This is a different type of training. It's not about the other person, it's about you. Can you be a mirror? That means you got rid of your ego. That's big. You came into that room's present as a mirror. Yeah. That's why the only real therapist is the therapist who's working on himself much more than what he's doing for his patients. The Rebbe once told somebody, when you demand something from somebody else, it can only be after you demanded double that amount from yourself and you did it. You hear? Why? Because that's the only real communication. The change you want to see in others is all based on the change you're going to see in yourself. Always. People don't like to hear it because, no, you're the problem. It doesn't work that way. So this is an example. I'm talking on an emotional level. It's true intellectually, it's true emotionally. What does it mean to be a mirror? What it means to be a mirror is, can I be here right now in this session, in this room, and completely not present? Who's present? You. So what am I doing? What am I, chopped liver? In most conversations, I'm trying to impress you, you're trying to impress me, and it makes sense, because we are in control mode. We do it subtly, we're sophisticated about it, right? You'll say something smart, I'll say something smarter, you'll say something even smarter, I'll say something even smarter. You know how men talk? You'll say a vart, I'll say a vart, da, 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 da. What's happening here? It's like it's an ego convention, or as somebody once said, one horse is scratching the back of another horse. Du kratz meine Acherayim, ich will kratzen deine Acherayim. That's basically what we're doing. The Gemara has an expression, you kratz me, ich will dir kratzen. In the mikveh, I can't scratch my back. You scratch my back, so I'll scratch your back. Somebody once said, a shop guy said, what are all these titulim that, gedolim write to each other? So he said, it's basically, you scratch my back and I'll scratch your back. I don't mean everybody, I mean some people. And even if I'm with my student and my child and I love them, I know I love them. But can I take my eye out of the equation and really, really be a mirror? Really, it's very, very humbling. This is called tzimtzum. This is what the true teacher does. He suspends everything. He doesn't even leave 1% to completely tune into the world of the other. Nu, is this tzimtzum or is this achdus? This is all because I want you. I want you. I don't want me. I want you. I want a relationship. This is what listening is. How many people really know how to listen? Listen doesn't mean... Very good. Yeah. What does it mean when your wife speaks to you, you listen? Or when your husband speaks to you, you listen? Or when your child speaks to you, you listen? What does that even mean, listening? Listening doesn't mean that I'm not texting. That's step one. But it's much deeper. Listening means that there's no I that's present in the listening. And trust me, that's not easy. I'm listening with an opinion. I'm waiting for you to finish so I could explain to you how stupid you are. Why am I not interrupting you? Because I'm a gentleman. I'm not a peta adam. So I'm waiting. When are you going to finish with your shtusim and your idiocy so I could finally knock a few shvekas, a few nails into your brain and make you normal?
In the meantime, you heard nothing.
How can I hear something when I'm disagreeing with you before you began and I already know who you are before you began? I'm completely in my own world. And the more brilliant you are, the more dangerous you are. Right? The more brilliant the Rav is, the more dangerous it is, because I should suspend me. I'm 75 years old. I developed a system. I'm smart. Look at my resume in Wikipedia, how many things I did and have. Now, what do you want me to suspend? What am I, a loser? You're a loser. I'm a winner. So why should I suspend a winner for a loser? Just explain to me the science of that. So it all may be true, but education, communication, truly creating not a follower or a robot, but as they say, real leaders create leaders. You're not going to create. You're going to create at best people who are just, obedient robots who will live in your spell, and that's what some parents want for their kids. They call it kibud av. They have a name for it. It's called kibud av. There's a name for it, yeah. That's what called using religion for my insecurities. Kibud av. What does kibud av mean? Kibud av means what? Be a zombie, don't think, don't feel, and just be a obedient robot. Kibud av is a big mitzvah. Laman yarichun yamecha. It's one of the Aseres HaDibros. Kibud av means respecting a father. And what's the definition of a father? The definition of father is he wants his child to fly, not his child to be suppressed. He wants his child to be his child, not to be just an extension. That's what a father is. That's what a real father and mother is. So this tzimtzum of the Rav suspending his oir, he has to reinvent himself. What does about reinvent himself? Reinvent himself means tune in to the wisdom and the energy that the student is truly capable of experiencing and absorbing. And it's a magical process, because in this process the teacher gains as much as the student, and sometimes even more. He also reinvents himself. You become something much deeper than you ever imagined by completely going out of the self that you imagined and anticipated. It's a very humbling, but it's a very powerful process. Yeah. The second line. This is not enough. He has to go through many more tzimtzumim, many more filters and processes of condensing and concealing in order for it to be absorbed by the student. Now here's the question. When he's teaching the Mishnah to the 5-year-old, to the 10-year-old, and he suspended everything he knows about this Mishnah to tune in, did he really forget everything? No, it's all there. But the student can't know that he knows any of it. He can't, because if the student knows any of it, knows that the student is done. So in the Rav's world, the Rakachava giving a shir to 10-year-old kids, he didn't forget what he knows. In that Gemara itself that he's learning, he knows all the depth, but nobody else knows what he knows. What they hear is just simple words that the 10-year-old understands, the 50-year-old understands, the 40-year-old understands. Today, 10-year-olds understand more than 40-year-olds. So it's not really about age, you know. But, so there's a real tzimtzum here. It's a real tzimtzum. But who is it for? For the makabel, not for the mashpiyah. For the mashpiyah, in the very place, in these very words, he knows the whole depth. The Gemara says, whenever I say this, people laugh. You'll see why. People should always teach their students with brevity. If you could say it in a minute, don't say it in 2 hours. Derech tzara, kitzer, like the Mishnayos. You have a Mishnah, then you have 10 pages of Gemara analyzing the Mishnah. So why couldn't you write this? The answer is because Rabbeinu HaKadosh wanted to put it into 5 lines. In the time of the Gemara, they didn't understand, so they had to explain what is in these 5 lines. So when the Tanaim read the Mishnah, they saw the Gemara there, but they didn't need the elaboration because they saw it in the Kitzer. I don't see it in the Mishnah. So you say, why is there a Vav, and why is there an extra word, and why is there Reisha this and the Sefer this? And the Gemara will show how in these few lines of the Mishnah you have the whole picture. But it was all there in the Mishnah. And the author of the Mishnah sees it all there. But the child can understand the Mishnah because it's written concise and it's written clear and it's written brief and doesn't have all the pilpul and all the depth, even though it's there. So from this teacher, so there's a paradox happening here. The teacher, even when he suspended everything, it's not that he forgot everything. It's being in the world of the makabel, you need to completely be in that world. And in that world, there was a complete tzimtzum. You're nothing but a mirror. The teacher is completely channeling wisdom in the world of the student. But it's not that all that wisdom is gone. Of course it's not gone. It just can't be present in the world of the Makabel because he won't be able to be formed. When this Rav removes his seichel completely, his way of thinking, his paradigm, his ideas, it's not that his seichel is gone. He presses delete and everything is erased. Everything he ever learned and everything he ever... No. It's that the student receiving it is not connecting to that realm of his. Why? The fact that the Rav himself is a giant intellect, he's a genius. His intellect is gigantic. His emotional life may be rich, ad infinitum. It's all true. But that's not negaya to the connection of the student with the teacher, because you want to connect the student to this. And if you connect the student to that level, it's like a wire, channeling electricity. And the voltage is too intense. And what happens to the wire? It burns. There's nothing left. So you expressed your electricity. Thank you. If you want to connect to the student, that all has to be condensed. Leave your electricity at home. What's coming through the wire is a very limited form of electricity. Why? So that the refrigerator should be able to be animated, the computer should be able to be animated, the person should be able to receive it. But does it mean that the electricity is gone? No, it means this wire channel, just like we spoke in the first example with prophecy. It's about the wire. The electricity is here. All the brilliance of the teacher is here. He knows it and he can access it. In fact, the moment the shiur finishes, the moment he finishes with the student, he goes right back. He's not... yeah, he goes right back. But for the connection, what you need is complete tzimtzum. ולכן כאשר הרב צריך להשפיע לגל השכל תלמידוי, אזי שכלו של הרב אינו בגילוי, אפילו לא השכל המוגבל שבערך לתלמיד, כפי שהוא אצל הרב ביחד עם שכל של הרב מצד עצמו. You know what else he has to get rid of? Even the limited ideas that were proportionate and on the level of the student, but they are by the teacher together with his original seichel, even that's too much for the student. You understand what he's saying here? This is back to what he said, that before the tzimtzum you also have the Oir HaGvul. But when the Oir HaGvul is together with the Oir HaBli Gvul, it's part of Bli Gvul, and therefore you can't give that. You have to completely get rid of the Oir HaBli Gvul. You understand what he's just said? Meaning like this. The Rakachava Gon knows what a 5-year-old knows. It's not like he doesn't know. We said he has to reinvent himself. He doesn't have to reinvent himself. Just because he knows infinite more layers of Shas doesn't mean he doesn't know the Pshat and the Pasuk Chumash. So what do you have to reinvent? The Pshat is that the way he knows the Pshat is already different because it's all one. So even the Seichel HaMugbal of the teacher, which is Be'erech to the Talmud, when it's mixed together, when it's one chalent, it's not going to work. Because it's channeling the infinite, it's part of the infinite. So that's why he first has to get rid of the Oir HaBli Gvul completely. Like I have to suspend everything to be completely empty. It sounds like here he has to suspend even the Oir HaMugbal. In other words, get rid of the whole light. Cholo, make an empty space of everything. This is a whole new vart here. And now, reinvent yourself. Now you can go back. Once you separated, once you suspended the light,
would mean that he literally forgot.
yeah. Tzimtzum K'pshuta would mean he forgot. It's really suspended. It's gone. Where is it? It's gone. Maybe when he gets home, he'll find it somewhere. It's in a closet. But certainly right here, with the student, it's gone. Tzimtzum Eina K'pshuta means, no, the whole earth is here. And it's even there in the talking, it's there. But it's completely not begala, meaning the student has no clue of any of it. Because the moment you'll pour that into the chalent, the moment you pour that into the equation, you lost him. You burnt him up. You're not making a student anymore. You're making a replica of yourself. You want to make a replica of yourself? No problem, but that's not what a student is. A student is not a replica of you. A student is his own man who one day will be like you and maybe more. As he says, Netiyosav Kamaisa. So even the Seichel HaMugbal, which is be'erech to the Talmud, as long as it's mixed in to the Seichel HaBilti Mugbal, as long as the finite is mixed in with the infinite, so the finite is just part of the infinite, it's the infinite being finite, it's not called finite. The most literal level of the teacher is still not good enough, is still too potent to give to the student. So therefore, he has to suspend the infinite completely. And that's where the reinvention of the self comes. You have to rediscover the simple, divorced from the infinite. That's where he has to reinvent himself, you understand? He's not reinventing himself because he didn't have that. If the student had it, he can also have it. But to be able to extract that as a separate reality and give it dignity. And it's really about respect for the process of where that person is. It's really respect for that process. But the whole light is still present, even though it's not begili. So when we say there was no tzimtzum in the oir, kipshutai, what it means is that the tzimtzum is shaloi kipshutai. It means in the student's world, it was filtered very seriously. But in that very reality, for the Rav, there was no tzimtzum whatsoever. In fact, in the very words he's teaching, he sees the whole depth, even though the Talmud doesn't see it.
That's why it seems it was only in the Or.
Yeah. So in the Moyer there's Bechal no tzimtzum. In the Moyer there's Bechal no tzimtzum. It's fully present.
It was only humbleness.
Yeah. What's only humbleness?
The Maor
Yeah.
was humble.
Yeah.
In the state of humbleness, in order
Yeah.
to
Yeah, yeah.
the Or.
The Moyer is in a state of humbleness for the tzimtzum. So there's no tzimtzum in the Moyer. Not only there's no tzimtzum in the Moyer, we're going to see later, in many ways, yeah. In many ways, it's not just there's no tzimtzum in the Moyer. In many ways, the tzimtzum really means that the Ur went back to the Moyer. We're going to see a little later. In other words, the ability not to be present, the ability to be humble comes from etzem. Not Ur means what I am needs to be expressed. Moyer is I am who I am, I don't have to be expressed. You not knowing that I exist doesn't take away from my existence. So tzimtzum really means that the Ur goes back to Moyer. And when the Ur goes back to Moyer, the Moyer is fully present. But it's not present in a way that you have to know about it. That's what humility means. The teacher is not less present by the class than if he would be before. On the contrary, there's a deeper presence. There's the powerful presence of humility. That's where you see the real teacher. Where do you see the real leader? You see the real leader in the student that becomes the greatest leader. That's where you see the teacher. You see the teacher by not seeing the teacher. If you have to see the teacher in every student, that means this teacher himself is still looking for his validation. When the teacher can completely suspend himself and let the people fly, and that's the teacher. He's most shown by the fact that he's not showing. You know, the wind beneath the wings, nobody has to see the wind. But everybody knows that those wings are flying because there was a wind that was once put in, and now the wings go. The mother bird doesn't tell the bird, stay here with me so you can give me nachas. The mother bird says, out! Go fly! Go make your own nest! And that's where you see a mother bird. The mother bird you see in the independence that she fosters. You see much more of her. The greatest people you see in the fact that you don't see them. In the fact that they remain invisible. They don't have to be visible. So on a deeper level, we're going to see the Ur going back to Atzmos is an aliyah. It's an aliyah in the Ur, and that's what the Moed is. And over there, there's no tzimtzum. Because over there, there's no need for gilui, so there's no need for tzimtzum. It is what it is. It doesn't have to be revealed. Where is the tzimtzum? The tzimtzum is in the Ur. And even that tzimtzum in the Ur is only mitzad, the recipient, so that he should or she should be able to become the person they need to become. But the Ur itself is completely present in the true reality.
So it means even the Or,
Yeah. So first of all, Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi in the Moyer, that's Lo Shanisi in the Moyer. Even in the Oid, it's also Lo Shanisi, because the Oid is also present. But the student can't yet know the secret. That's what he says. So even in the Oid, there's no change. The whole change is only in the absence of a recipient who's not yet ready to receive this light. Like the light of Atzilus or the light of prophecy. That should be revealed just like Moshe in his time. And the prophets in their time. They didn't create Atzilus. They could just tune in to the light that was there and channel it. Just like when we create the proper vessels for the electrons to flow. Just like we create the proper instruments to pick up frequencies and wavelengths of light that were always there. We just didn't have the kalim for it. I don't know if you know, every physical object emits light. Every one. So everything should be the sun. Why is there only one sun? Everything emits light. The answer is not that they don't emit light. The answer is usually their wavelength is of such nature that we don't have the kalim to receive it. So we say there's no light being emitted. It's not that, of course there's light being emitted. There's just no mekabel. The mekabel is not ready. The earth didn't change. There's earth. In many ways it's stronger. There's colors we don't see. There's sounds we don't hear. Not because they're not here. They're here with sometimes they're much more intense. And because they're more intense, our system shuts down if they were there. So the system says it doesn't exist. We call it symptom. Why do we call it symptom? Because it's because I can't take it, because I'm not going to be there. And that's part of the intention. It's not a mistake. The tzimtzum is a real thing for the Talmud. It's a real thing. Because that's the process for him to grow into become his own man. He'll never become his own man. He'll never become the person who really absorbs it without the tzimtzum. So it's really all part of Achdus. It's really a din in Achdus. So number one, in the Moyer, there's no tzimtzum. Even when there's a tzimtzum in there, there's no tzimtzum in there. And not only that, as we'll see later, it's an aliyah in the Ur. Mitzad the Moyer. That's why Lamaila Adein Ketz is tzimtzum. Somebody wrote a question, I don't understand why going up is called concealment, going down is concealment. The answer is no. Because this is another major chiddush of the Alter Rebbe. In Chassidus, that tzimtzum in Ur is really hiskalalus ha'ur ba'atzmusai. It's the Ur going back to the etzem. The capacity of tzimtzum is the Ur being aligned with the essence. Because in the essence, presence doesn't make you more present than non-presence. The most confident people know how to be silent as much as they know how to express themselves. And in their silence, you see much more of their confidence. They know how to pull back as much as they know how to project. Because their confidence is not coming from someone else validating it. It's coming from within. It's just a metaphor. Obviously, God's Ur doesn't have the issue that it needs validation. But in a very subtle way, Ur means I exist because you know I exist. That's what Ur is. Ur is light. What does light mean? Light means communication, transmission. So what's my existence? My existence is that I'm out there. Etzem doesn't have that. Etzem exists because it exists. It does no because. It exists essentially. Now you understand what that means in terms of emotional health. That's the key. When people don't know their etzem, only their Ur, it becomes very problematic. Because Ur is always relational. That's why you have to have a good Moyer to be able to have Ur. And that's why only when the Moyer is powerful can the Ur make a tzimtzum. And that's why people who don't have a healthy core can have a healthy relationship. You can't heal your core through a relationship. A relationship can help you, can enhance, you can work it out. But ultimately it's the inner work of only in my essence that's whole can I suspend myself. And every relationship is about tzimtzum. There's no relationship without tzimtzum. Because a relationship is about you. So for that I have to create space for you. The only way I could create space for you is my eye is healthy enough to be able to say you can create space for the other without committing suicide. And emotionally that's very difficult. If there's no etzem. You teufus? Emotionally, if there's no core, I'll never do that. The opposite extreme of that is narcissism. What's narcissism? Narcissism is if I even cede 1 inch of my emotional territory to you, I'm dead. Narcissism is the whole world is my mirror. Why is the whole world my mirror? Because the moment I let you be here when I'm not here, it's a death sentence. The narcissist is a terrified child. If he does not control everything in the world that's all about him, he's dead or she's dead. It's a horrible disease. Because there's no him, there's no core. If there's no core, how can I suspend myself? You're crazy? All I have is you telling me that I exist. So if you don't tell me 24/7 that I exist and I'm lovable and I'm the star of the community and I'm the biggest Baal Chesed who ever existed since Avram Avinu, and I'm even bigger than Avram Avinu because I don't get so much attention like Avram Avinu. I'm a dead man. I'm a dead man. You understand the tragedy? Now I'm taking something very, very lofty and applying it like in very low, in very serious states of people's limitations. But like I said, everything in Chassidus translates into the most concrete, lowest levels of existence. If not, we're not getting the point. So I don't mean chas v'shalom to trivialize an inyan like oir, but it's all in a very subtle way. It teaches us what the issue is. The only way you could make a tzimtzum in yourself is if you find your core. That's why back to the therapist, the teacher, the parent, the educator, the principal, if they are not healthy people inside, they will contaminate, unintentionally, they may be nice people, but they will contaminate the other person. That's why the main work is internal, it's not the other person. Textbooks are good. This is what you say, this is what you don't say, this is the real work is inside. How deep can your tzimtzum be? So I'm really going a little ahead of here because you brought it up. But tzimtzum is called lamaila because it's the oir going deeper. From our level, it's the oir going away. It's concealment. It's darkness. But from a deeper perspective, not kipshutai, it's the oir going up, not down. Revelation is the oir going down. Concealment is the oir going up to a place where revelation is not necessary for existence. And the greatest blessing in a relationship is when you could remain present even when a rock was thrown at the mirror. I could remain present. How can I remain present? Because there's a core. There's a core that doesn't need you to tell me that I'm the greatest guy who ever lived in order for me to exist. If I do need that, I am so vulnerable and volatile because the moment I get criticism rather than a compliment, I literally melt away like wax in a candle or like margarine in a frying pan. You ever see how margarine melts in a frying pan? Or you ever see butter? Margarine is not healthy, sorry. So you put butter and you put the fire on and the butter just melts away, and that's what some of us are like. There's nothing there, literally nothing there. So I go to the next one. And this is where a lot of challenge happens. But now oid is so important because oid is relationships. And that's the purpose of creation, relationships. But it starts with moyer, not with oid. And if a relationship is based on tzimtzum, it can only happen when the oid goes back to the etzem. Yeah. Right? So therefore, in the etzem is ani Hashem lo shanisi. The etzem is fully present. The etzem could be present in non-revelation as much as it is in revelation. That's the atzmus. It's present in every situation in life. Over there was no tzimtzum b'chla. The chiddush here is that even in oir, there was no real tzimtzum. Even though oir, which is all about relationship, it's all about communication, it's all about what I'm getting, it's the light that you're giving. And over here there was a tzimtzum. Why was there a tzimtzum? Because you need to create a student. And remember, in the metaphor, the teacher doesn't create the student, the teacher teaches the student. In the nimshal, the teacher is creating the brain of the student. Imagine I give a class and my class is not teaching information, it's creating the brain. Think about that. And my brain is infinite and I want to create a finite brain. What does that look like? Huh? Literally create a new neural path. If you still remain present in your infinite brain, even the finite part of it, which is part of the infinite, that brain won't be created. You'll create a quantum brain at best. Infinite, finite, probable, certain, not probable, almost certain, Schrodinger's cat dead and alive, clockwise, counterclockwise. It's called a Mashigana. You'll create a quantum brain, quasi-finite, infinite brain. So there has to be a complete suspension of a whole new reality of the Talmud being molded as a finite brain, a finite student. You're not just giving information. The mashal is so incomplete because it's about information. But it's the best mashal that we have because we don't create students yesh me'ayin. Yeah. So the tzimtzum is basically the suspension of all infinite revelation. And in that empty space, a world can emerge, a student can emerge. In the empty space, a new reality can emerge and develop as a healthy being, as a real being, as a student, as a teacher, as a child, as a disciple, who becomes a real person and trusts themselves and becomes confident. Only because you reinvented yourself. God reinvented himself. That's the tzimtzum. And as he reinvented himself to create an oir hagvul, a limited moir, he suspended the whole infinity. As he reinvents himself in this process, we say, tzimtzum is shaloi kipshuta. Because even in that oir, it's all Ani Hashem lo shanisi. It's just how much the Talmud is picking up based on his own capacity, which will continue to grow.
From the side of the creation, Takek was a full tzimtzum.
Yeah.
Unless we see it deeper from the other side, we can't.
So from the side of creation, it's a real tzimtzum. That's why we say tzimtzum is not fake. And you say, but from the other side, if you look at it from the other side, there's no tzimtzum b'chlal. Where's their tzimtzum? I'm just trying to talk to you.
The tzimtzum was an ability to relate to.
The tzimtzum is the ability to relate to the student that should be a student. But the teacher is fully present, and his whole light is present. Back to the Rakat Shava, he doesn't have to forget all the depth in the Mishnah because he's talking to a 6-year-old.
And the ultimate goal of the teacher is that the student should reach his level.
Oh.
Not so sure, is it? Ideal, right? But I don't think.
You can't go in with that plan.
So now I just want to learn 4 more lines. And then we're going to take a break. V'yiseda mizeh, it's really much deeper than this. This is not the real story. This is an introduction. V'yiseda mizeh mevar balai lula ba'maimer. It's much deeper. Shafilu mitzadat tzimtzum atzmoi ein inyan shel shinui.
We just covered it.
No. Even mitzadat tzimtzum is ani Hashem lo shanisi. Till now we said mitzad Rav ani Hashem lo shanisi. Mitzad the one who made the tzimtzum ani Hashem lo shanisi. But in the world of the student, of course there's a tzimtzum. That's your whole point. So he's saying no. Even mitzad the tzimtzum, it's shaloi kipshut. Even mitzad the tzimtzum, there's no tzimtzum. What are you talking about? The gamle gabeinu hine at tzimtzum addition v'chala tzimtzum they say the ishtaushel sareim b'shvil hagilui. Even from our perspective, not his perspective. We spoke about his perspective. If you go to the other side of tzimtzum, right, there's tzimtzum from this side and from that side. From my side, from the student side, it's like all I heard was just a little trickle of information that goes in. But if you go to the other side, the infinity, oh, it's all there. The infinity, there's prophecy, there's Atzilus, everything is right here.
At your point, only if you accept that you're infinite, then there is no tzimtzum.
Yeah.
Because if there is,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
sure.
So till now we learned there's 2 angles, and I'm fine with that. It's very nice. It's a beautiful word. That mitzvah Hashem, there's no tzimtzum. Everything is Ein Sof. But what are we still? What's missing? What's missing? What's missing is, from my side, of course there's a tzimtzum. So maybe one day, I don't know, maybe after Tchis HaMesim, maybe after 50,000 billion light years, I'll be able to get to the other side. And I'm not sure, because if I am I won't be able. If I'm a student, I'm still a student. But certainly, even if you say, yeah, right now, there's a tzimtzum. No. And it's a real tzimtzum. You're just saying from another angle it's not a real tzimtzum. But from the Rakachava is the Rakachava. Back to my marshal. But the student is the student. He's not the Rakachava. Yeah, I know. I'm just using a marshal from the Rakachava because he speaks here about a Rav and a Talmud. So I'm talking about a person that in our generation, you could see it clearly in his Sfarim that it was a different magnitude of awareness. I'm just using it as a marshal. You could talk about Abai, you could talk about Rabbi, you could talk about the Alter Rebbe, you could talk about the Rebbe, whatever. You could talk about But the student is a student. Or to put it in the Lashon of Chassidus, Legabe Hashem, Tzimtzum is not master. But Legabe me, of course Tzimtzum is master. That's why I'm sitting here and talking. That's why we're finite. Yeah. So this, the Rebbe says it, no, you have to go deeper. Tzimtzum is not Kipshuta, is not only talking Legabe Hashem, it's talking Legabe us. That's the Chiddush. Why? Because he says the whole purpose of Tzimtzum is Achdus. The purpose of Tzimtzum is Bishvil Hagilui, is for the connection. It's for the intimacy, it's for the Dveikus. The Liyoyz the Ikir HaTzimtzum Ubichdei Sheyiskabel. The whole purpose of Tzimtzum is why are you doing the Tzimtzum? Because you want to go you want to be distant, or because you want to be close? What's the inyan of Tzimtzum? What's the DNA of Tzimtzum? What's the motive behind Tzimtzum? It's in order, Kadesha Yiskabel, so that the student should receive the wisdom. Emkena de Eina Tzimtzum master. So Tzimtzum is not concealing, it's revealing. Tzimtzum is not concealing, it's revealing. You just said it's concealing. Yes. But what is the essence of the concealment? The essence of the concealment is to reveal, not to conceal. Yes. The only way we could ever connect in an authentic way without compromising your identity is Tzimtzum. So Tzimtzum is not me moving away from you. Tzimtzum is me moving closer and closer and closer to you. Only through a true essence. And that's only because the Ma'ir remains revealed. The Ma'ir remains present throughout the Tzimtzum. Yeah. That's called transforming the Tzimtzum, not running from the Tzimtzum. It's looking into the Tzimtzum and seeing what is Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is all revelation. And that's why I said yesterday, Tzimtzum is the ultimate spiritual equation to heal the world. Now you get it. Not only because from God's perspective, it's blissful. I know that. We're talking from our perspective. That's the key. Because if we're not talking from our perspective, there's still that gulf. There's still, you are you, I am I, you have good intentions, but darkness is darkness. The secret of Tzimtzum is that even in the level where there is a Tzimtzum, ba'emes, it's not a Tzimtzum, it's a Gilui. Why is this? So he says, Va'inyan bazeh, k'vishem evar ba'mashal echef shel Rav Ushi neti Yosef k'moisa. In the Maimer, the Rebbe Dayat says two words. The Rav wants that should be neti Yosef k'moisa. You know what this means? The Gemara says in Tainus, Daf Hey, that there was a person who found refuge on a heart-scorching day in a beautiful, under the branches and leaves and shade of a beautiful oasis. It was a fig tree or day. So and it was a beautiful brook of. He was boiling out. There was a brook of water and there was shade, and he slept and he ate the figs and he drank the water. And when he left, he said, Elon, Elon, how do I bless you? That you should have beautiful fruits. You have beautiful fruits. You should have amazing shade. You have amazing shade. You should have enough water. You have enough water. So what's my blessing? She'iyu nitiyosecha. Your children should be like you. Your offspring should be like you. In other words, the seeds that you disseminate and will create new trees should be mamash like you. Real kibudav, yeah. That's kibudav. That's the greatest blessing for the father, for the tree, for the father, mother tree, that your child shouldn't be a copy, shouldn't be a dependent copy, a replica, because there's only one source. They should have the power of source. Yeah. They shouldn't be children. They should be able to be fathers just like you were. Don't keep them dependent on you. That's not the blessing. The blessing is let them be independent from you. So then they'll be you. They'll be you much more than if they are dependent on you. You're typhus. That's the word of tzimtzum. Huh? Just one second. To put it a little bit in endearing terms, the greatest desire of God is that you shouldn't just be dependent, that you should be divine. That's intimacy. Intimacy is that we're one. If we're one, it's mamish a place of coherence, of complete achdus, of complete convergence. So it's not anymore you're just receiving, you're just reacting, you're just replicating, you're just mekabel, which is all beautiful. That's not the word. The Rav wants netiyos of kemaisai. The netiyah, the little baby sapling that was planted from this tree, should one day grow as tall and powerful and robust as the tree. That's what the parent wants. That's what a real teacher wants. And the whole tzimtzum is about that. What's the tzimtzum? The tzimtzum is for you to get it, to build your capacity, to grow your identity. That's tzimtzum. If I project me, at best you'll be under my spell, you'll be under my light. And even if I'm a good, healthy guy, I'm a great father, you come into my business, you'll get, 6 digits. But you're forever, the nebach. That's not intimacy. That's not vekas. That's not partnership. That's not dira b'tachtayim. That's not married. That's not vekas. It's not v'hoyu l'basar echad. So the Rebbe says like this. Hainu sha'tachlis shesoif kol soif yagia talmid liyas k'may harav. It's unbelievable words. The purpose is the student should be like the Rav. Ella shekedei she'il talmid yovel lezet tzarich liyas tchila tzimtzum v'siluk seichel harav legamri k'may tzimtzum arishin shu b'derech siluk v'achakach tzarich la'is amshachas kav kotzer v'dak hainu shetzarich lahamtzi ur seichel shul ufiyerech hatalmid וגם לאחרי ישריו המציאר השכל של וירח התלמוד אינו יכול להמשיך כפי שהוא אצלו אלא צריך לעשות בזה כמה וכמה צמצומים ואלמס שזהו עניין של קו קוצר ודק בכדי שיוכל להסקבל אצל התלמוד ועל ידי זה יפעל סוף כל סוף שיהיו נטייה יוסף כמייסה. So here he cracks the code. I want the Talmud to be exactly like me. So paradoxically, what do I have to do? I have to conceal myself completely. You hear? So what we're calling tzimtzum on a deeper level is the ultimate intimacy. If I don't want you to be like me, if I want you just to be a follower, just be a projection of me, then don't make it tzimtzum. Express Ein Sof and let him become swallowed up in Ein Sof and you're good. I want you. I want a relationship with you. I want the other. But there's no other. There's only Einoid Mulvadai. So what has to happen? So I conceal myself completely.
That's why with Salmenu
Kidmusenu. Yeah. But Salmenu Kidmusenu. I conceal myself completely. The Rav now goes into an opposite. What you want your student to be like you, so stay here. Give him everything. If you give him everything, you got nothing. You just got you. Either he shuts down or he just copies you. Or either he's swallowed up by you or he disassociates with you. One of the two. Either you run this way or you run that way. Either you go to Ein Sof or you go to Gvul. You become a cynic. You didn't create the dvekas. I'm not against humor. I'm against cynicism. Whenever you hear cynicism, you'll hear pain and fear behind it. I never saw any other form of cynicism. I never did. Humor is different. Humor is not taking your ego so seriously, understanding how the world works, making light of things, seeing the game of a lot of things are a game. That's healthy. Also, not 24/7, but if humor is 24/7, it's cynicism. That's my point. The Gemara says that Rabbi every shir would start with a milsa de b'dichisa, so they opened up, but then after that they sat with yira. He started with humor. From the humor, he went to seriousness, because when the seriousness is predicated on humor, it's a different type of seriousness. It's not fakvetched. It's an open seriousness. But it doesn't say the whole shir he made jokes. Yes. Yeah.
There is a joke part
Yeah.
and there is a truth
Yeah.
part,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
the
So by the Rav suspending his seichel completely, everything, what does that mean? The first symptom that's b'derech siluk, now he brings in a little line. What's the little line? What's the little kav? He has to invent the seichel that's lefiyerech the Talmud. And he can't leave that in the beginning, because that original seichel, you remember, even the seichel ha-mugbal, when it's mixed with the seichel ha-bilti mugbal, it's too overwhelming. That's why he has to suspend everything and reinvent himself and extract from his own infinity the finite part and bring that back in. But even that has to come in as a thin line. The Rav can't just take his finite seichel and give that. He has to go through more and more tzimtzumim, and only one little line goes into the student. Very, very low voltage. And ultimately he grows his capacity. Now understand this. In that little line, from the Rav's perspective, you have everything. Tzimtzum is not kipshuta. He didn't forget the Gemara. He knows it. So why is it so little? Because he wants the student to absorb it. But as the student grows capacity more and more, what happens? It says after 40 years, you understand your Rebbe. What does that mean after 40 years? After 40 years, you could see how in those one-liners, you had all the depth. And he grows and grows and grows and grows and more, until one day, he can get it all. And then he touches the infinite light. ומזה מובן שלא יזו בלבד שמצד העוד אין עניין של שינוי, אלא כיוון שמצד עצמי יש שני בגילוי, ורק אינו שייך אל התלמיד, אלא עוד זויז, שאפילו הצמצום עצמי, כיוון שכל תכליסו הוא שהתלמיד יהיה כמו הרב נתי יוסף כמויסוי. היינו שהתלמיד יקבל גם את העוד הבלי גבול של הרב, הרי בשעת הצמצום גופה נמצא בהצמצום העוד הבלי גבול של הרב. This means not only mitzad the Erd, there's no change because the Erd is always revealed and present. It's just not picked up by the Talmud. We're saying something more. Even the tzimtzum itself, even that dimension, that part, those antennas that are blocked, even the antennas that are blocked, they're not receiving. The tzimtzum itself, since its entire purpose is that the student should be like the Rav. In other words, the student should receive even the infinite light. So in the tzimtzum itself, in the tzimtzum you have the full infinity. You hear what he's saying? In the tzimtzum itself you have everything. But for the student to really absorb it in a way that it becomes his or her true identity, it needs to be communicated in a way that he's experiencing it as a tzimtzum. Because if he's not experiencing it as a tzimtzum, he's experiencing it as not a tzimtzum, he'll never be able to touch that infinite space of oneness. He'll never get the message. There won't be him. It won't be nothing. There won't be anybody there.
The reality has to be.
Yeah. For him to ultimately become one with his own true reality and the ultimate true reality, the reality is communicated in this way. Aval ein ze shinui amiti, but it's not a real change. It's not a real tzimtzum. Kiyim kefi sha'arav roye bezeh sa'inyan the neti yosef k'maisai. The way the Rav sees the tzimtzum is a process of him getting everything. That's all it is. He sees in this my student becoming, the plant becoming just like me. The way the Rav sees it in the tzimtzum, it's the beginning and it's the potential. And then it has to be actualized in the world of the Talmud. And that's what the tzimtzum is. So essentially, what we're learning now is that when you say tzimtzum is not kipshuta, it doesn't only mean that mitzad the light, it's fully present in this world, the Oir HaBligvul, we just don't have the antennas. But mitzad the Talmud, of course, it's not here. So the Rebbe is now teaching that there's one deeper element. That Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi is not only not in the tzimtzum, not in the moyer, and not only not in the oir, but even mitzad the mekabel, even mitzad the recipient. In other words, even in the finite light, even in the information that you're giving to the student, when the student will open up this information, he'll see that in that information you had everything. So why was it so concealed? It was concealed so that you should be able to have everything. You should be able to have everything. So for this we have to build capacity and expand capacity. And then after 40 years, as it says, you'll go back and you'll say, that's what my teacher meant. That's what it was. That's what it was. That's what it was. So why not just give that all? Then you have no student. You just overwhelmed him. So in Mela, every nekuda of the tzimtzum, every nekuda of the concealment, even the finite light, which is so limited and so filtered, it's all the infinite light. There was no tzimtzum. But there was a tzimtzum. No. This is the process to be able to communicate the full Ein Sof of pre-tzimtzum in a post-tzimtzum reality. That's how it's being communicated. You're communicating it. You're not holding it back. So in a person's life, what does this mean? It's not just that inside everything, there's the presence of Ein Sof. And in a different dimension, this very reality is pure infinity. That's true. Here he's saying something much more than that. He's saying the process that you're going through, that process itself, is just like pre-tzimtzum. It's not just in atzmos. It's not just in oir. It's even in the very process that I'm going through, which is completely not that. I'm just dealing with my own finite world and whatever that is, which is mixed up and it's extremely limited. Like the student, all they're getting is a tiny little ray of light. But that has everything. Everything is there. Everything is there.
Even if you are not there, the data communication
Yeah.
later on to come and
Yes.
that everything was there.
Everything was there. Everything was there. Literally everything was there. So on an experiential, energetic level, it's the full redemptive consciousness in that very process that I'm going through. Now the student doesn't experience all of this because the student is experiencing the growth process. It's about me being there. For me being there, I need to really work it through within my system, so it has to work through that system. And therefore the student translates it as complete concealment, complete darkness, or at least almost complete darkness. That's the experience. But what's really happening is infinite information is being communicated. Even as you say, when I'm not there, because I'm a product of tzimtzum, and my whole definition of it is a product of tzimtzum, what's really happening when the student is going to take the bull by its horns and open themselves up to what's really happening is you're going to see that every stage of this was simply allowing you to receive the entire light, and not just to receive the entire light, to be the full embodiment of the entire light exactly as it is pre-tzimtzum. The pre-tzimtzum is here right now, b'chol ha'toikef. But what does it mean b'chol ha'toikef? What does it mean with full intensity? Full intensity doesn't mean it looks that way. Because if it would look that way, then you're going back to the pre-creation. That's not the point. We know that's not the point. So the tzimtzum is the heichi timtza of achtos. That's why I said tzimtzum is all about achtos. It's what the Maggid says, the two halves becoming one. But you want the two halves to become one. Shtei chatzotzres. Aleph, Daled, Mem. Adam. How do the two halves become one? One, really one. V'hayu lebasar echad, one flesh. Nitiyosef k'moisai. That's what the tzimtzum is. The tzimtzum is the ultimate respect for the other. Why is there an ultimate respect for the other? Because I believe in you more than you might believe in yourself. If the teacher wouldn't believe in the student, he would give him everything. Just repeat my words. You don't have to think. Just come into my business, repeat what I'm saying. I'm the boss. I know better anyway. And you'll have a good life. That's not called believing in you. It's believing that b'stashmata. Spiritually speaking, it means either you get swallowed up in Ein Sof and there's no you, so it means God is everything, including you, or you detach. That's not Dira B'Tachtonim. Dira B'Tachtonim means that in the deepest space of Atzmos, I want the full oneness with you, Nitiyosef K'moisei, that you become a full embodiment of Atzmos Ein Sof. So it's all a story not just of love, but love of the highest infinite magnitude that we can't even imagine. For this, I need respect for you, for your process. Nitiyosef K'moisei. You want the student to become mamish like the Rav. He becomes the original creator of the information. He's not repeating, he's the creator of the information. That's what respect means. For this, you need complete tzimtzum. because I need to give you room for you. And everything we work through, including the dark stuff that we work through, it's all ultimately building capacity. It's finding who you are. It's working through every nekuda of the self to be able to become divine. But in that process, I'm not seeing the end goal. The Rav sees it right away. Because he just sees in the tzimtzum, in the suspending of all the information, all he sees is, I need to be a mirror for you. I can't say anything I'm thinking. Why? Because I want you one day to have everything. And if I want you one day to have everything, I need to allow you to grow into it. But that's all in potentiality. The way it's processed is through the tzimtzum. So tzimtzum is not a process. The tzimtzum is the process. It's not the destination. The destination is the whole tachlis of tzimtzum is achdus. And this is the oimik of tzimtzum shalai k'pshutai. First of all, that in the Moyer there's no tzimtzum. In the Ur there's no tzimtzum. And even in the Makabal of the Ur, where there is a tzimtzum, there's also no tzimtzum. Because tzimtzum is just the heichitimtza. It's the process of working it through. When the Talmud gets it, retroactively he looks at everything exactly like the Rav did. So that even in the tzimtzum itself, what did he see? He saw everything. He saw infinity on his own. But this time it's from within. And that's exactly what the tzimtzum accomplishes. That the student has all the wisdom of the teacher and becomes the source of it like the teacher. That's the ultimate veikus of Yisrael v'kutshabricha kol echad. And that's why in a person's life, think of it in terms of your own emotional life. As a person goes through life, the tzimtzum itself has all the codes. It has everything. But if I would know it that way, I could never own it. It never becomes mine. It's never internalized. So in my world, I'm experiencing concealment. I'm experiencing blockage. If the Talmud knows everything in the beginning, it's true. But it's like the chick, if I once wanted to break an egg so the chick could come out easily. And the farmer said, if you break the egg, you're going to kill the chick. Because its muscles get developed by breaking through the egg shell. By you breaking the egg, you're letting it come out and you're killing it. In other words, you don't respect the chick's power. You want to control it because you want to be kind. Your typhus? I know it's a little bit of a remote mushal, but it's not a bad mushal. By letting the chick break through the egg, you already know what's there. Your muscles are going to be developed. It's great. But the chick is like, stop it. Get me out of this place. Get me out of this place. Get me out of this place. I can't get you out of this place. I could, but I know you. Like, I know who you are. I know what you're supposed to be. Do you want to be a chicken or you want to be dead? No, I don't care. Right? And that's what life is. Like, that's what so much of life is. From the perspective of the Rav, he sees what the tzimtzum is. The whole tzimtzum is the process of dveikus. Everything of it. The goal is the same. And in the beginning, that's what he sees. In the concealment, all he sees is the true development of self. That's what he sees in the tzimtzum. For the student to be able to experience it on that level, that is what the tzimtzum is. So in a very practical way, as we go through our processes of life, you asked a question, does this mean there's no evil in the world, right? So that's exactly what we're talking about.
There must be a darkness to see the light. Everybody has to learn it its own way.
In the mashal, it's all nice. In the nimshal, it's not so simple, right? In the nimshal, it's not about a shiur of a teacher. It's about the whole story of history and the whole story of life. Here, the student is not just sitting at a shiur and getting, a condensed information from a teacher. We're talking here the experiential story of life as concealment, as the concealment of the Ein Sof, the sense of abandonment, the sense of detachment, the sense of struggle that every person has emotionally, physically, spiritually, psychologically, whatever that means. And I don't have to tell you how difficult things can be. And what people go through. So We're talking about a very, very sensitive thing. It's back what we spoke yesterday. It's not about dismissing, everything is bliss and bliss and bliss. That's why we don't say there was no tzimtzum. That's not what the Maimer is saying. Maimer is not saying there was no tzimtzum. You could say there's no tzimtzum, ein noid mulvadai. That wouldn't be right. Why not? Because that's not the Rebbe Tachtoinim. That's just denying everybody's process. You don't exist, you don't exist, you don't exist. But I'm feeling. Well, your feelings don't exist, you idiot. But I'm an idiot. That also doesn't exist. We sometimes do that, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work because it's not real. And the reason it's not real is because it's not what Hashem wants. That's why it's not real. That's why it doesn't work. Huh? It's not Niti Yosef Kamaisai. There's no student. You don't want a student, so don't create a world. I have no problem. I didn't tell you to create the world. This was your idea. Maybe it was our idea, whatever. Look at the Torah, it says somewhere that this was our idea to create the world. Actually, it says in Medrash, Mi nimlach b'nishmeisein shel tzaddikim. God consulted the neshamas. He wasn't sure if it's going to work. And the neshama said, we got this. This is already a very deep inyan, that it's only the neshamas that know the secret of tzimtzum. Hashem himself, Mitzad himself, is like, it says in the Torah, why did it says in Medrash that Hashem asked the neshamas to create? Why did he needs a bal yayitz? He needs eitzes, adaf eitzes? The answer is because Mitzad Hashem, there's no tzimtzum. So Hashem could say, create the world, that's not. The neshamas had to say, we got this one. The neshamas had to agree, because the neshamas know it from the other side. God remains infinite. He sees in all the darkness, he sees light. But the neshama sees the darkness. So the neshama has to say, we got this. Good question. How could there be neshamas before creation to consult? The answer is, because in that space, the neshamas are not created. The neshamas are completely... Huh? The neshamas are still agreeing now. Yeah. Rabbeinu Bechaya says in Parshas Kiseitze that there's nothing that happens to a person's life that he didn't agree. That when every creature was created, it was with full consent. Full consent that they want to do it, and you'll say, please, I never agreed to this. I never got the memo. I don't think I was at the meeting. I was not at the meeting. But that's the Vart. That Vart tells it all. If I would know that I was at the meeting, there would be no tzimtzum. You understand? And that then means it wouldn't be me. It would be God, which is amazing, but that's not the Rebbe Tachtaina. If I knew I was at that meeting, there would be no tzimtzum. Neshamas. It's Medrash Rabbi Rus. There's a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim. Im hamelech yoshvu b'melachtei. Says the Medrash Rabbi in Rus. It's a Medrash. This is not a Chassidish Torah. This is not Kabbalah. This is a Medrash Rabbah. So you're talking about the Tanoim. B'mi nimlach, when Hashem created the world, He consulted somebody. B'mi b'nishmeisein shel tzaddikim. Stellt sich the Shaila, there's no neshamas, there's no tzaddikim. So it says in Likud Torah Shmini, it says, the Rebbe says, the tzaddikim there is v'amech kulam tzaddikim. And that level, everybody is a tzaddik, pre-creation. So now we're learning the Vart. If I knew I was at that meeting, in other words, if I saw the tzimtzum from the perspective of the teacher, then I'm not a student. If I'm not a student, the student is never becoming like me. So you're having a teacher who has a clone of another teacher. It's like God making another God, The old question, could God make another God? The point is you're turning the Talmud into Nati Yosef Kamaisa. So for this, the Talmud needs to be a Talmud. He has to have the integrity of a Talmud. In simple English, it means, as important, Yiddishkeit is not just about it's not the human becoming divine. It's also the human being human. When the human loses his humanness, then you becoming divine is meaningless. The divine is divine. I know that the divine is the divine. Ein noid mulvadai. Ein noid mulvadai means that you're part of the equation, and that's you. That's your animal soul, it's your body, it's your nervous system, it's your home, it's your money, it's your business, it's the world. It's Olam Hazag Ashmi. And it begins with you. Yeah. Einoid Mulvade, pre-creation, I got this. I know Einoid Mulvade. Nobody has an issue with that. There would be no Shir, there would be no Basi Legani. Basi Legani, it's back to Basi Legani. I want to come to my garden, Legani, to the place that I envisioned originally. Iker Shchina b'tachtoinim hoisa. Right? That whole word in the beginning of the Maimer, Basi Legani. But together with you this time. So the whole tzimtzum, which means the process of the student not getting any of this and only dealing with a trickle of information, is essentially also not kipshutay. It's still ani Hashem lo shanisi. What do you mean lo shanisi? Come on, this is not called a change. You need a bigger change than this. It's called a change from the perspective of the process of what I'm dealing into. But when you look at the whole MS, it's the way Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi unfolds in a world of Shinui is through Tzimtzum. The way Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi is experienced in a world of change is through Tzimtzum. To be able to see that all the changes is all Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi. All the changes, all the vicissitudes, all the fluctuations, all the ups and downs and roller coasters or Ferris wheels in life, every person in their own stories and their own development, it's all the development from Galus to Gula, from Chayshach to Ur, and the transformation of it. And therefore, you don't have to fear any of those stages. You don't have to fear it. You could be fully present. That's back to what he said, the Kohen Gadol and Kodesh HaKadoshim. This is where it's at. What do you mean, this is where it's at? You know my life? What this is where it's at? Really? Like this is it? The moment the Talmud knows this is exactly where it's at. Because it's this information that the teacher just gave you, which is eclipsing 99.99999%, and maybe 100%. He just gave you a little kav. And even that kav came through a tzimtzum. So he removed everything, and then he gives you a little kav, dak v'kotzer, and that comes in. And in our world, that kav is also concealed. We don't feel the kav either. It's not like we hear a shiur of a teacher. It's a condensed shiur. Who's hearing a shiur? A prophet hears a shiur. We don't even hear a shiur. But still the student can hold on to this truth and understand that in this very present experience, if I have the courage to be able to be fully present and open myself up to the energy that's transpiring right here, right now. Not with understanding, not with intellect, but being, fully being, with full presence, full vulnerability. Somehow, and sometimes in inexplicable ways, this very information that's coming through, this very energy that's coming through, is a process called tzimtzum, in which the full Ein Sof and all the ultimate information is right there, right present, right there. I don't know how I'm supposed to end this class, so we'll just end it. Of course. Okay, so Be'ezer Hashem, we're going to continue. I thought we'll continue the Maimer next week. Monday I'm away. Monday there's no class, but Be'ezer Hashem will learn on Tuesday. There's a women's class. We'll learn on Wednesday and Thursday. Okay, Monday there's no class. Mitzvah Shabbos we're having a big Fabrengen. I mentioned earlier on 20 upstairs. Everybody's invited. A lichtike Shabbos, a freiliche Shabbos, the Heubene Shabbos, a guladike Shabbos. Yeah.
Nah, I thought I would have waited next week. Hashem wanted this.
Yeah.
He was a show me. Eric tries to be overwhelmed.
Wow. I did it. Ah? What'd you say? I did it. Tzlach Rabba.
We said that Rabbi Machaya says that before
Parshas Kiseitze, yeah.
well, like we're masking to everything that's here. The Mishnah of Avos says Al Karcha Al Tanayla.
Yeah.
So it seems like we were forced.
Yeah, you have to understand. Yeah, it's a good question. If it says Bal Karcha Chai, yeah. So the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, Bal Karcha Chai means not that the neshama was forced to come down, but that there's a part of the neshama that even when it's down here,
This one is yours or it's not all the writing? Let's see.
I don't know, it always gets lost.
You didn't bring it today.
Okay, fine. Even when it's down here, it has a rutzen to go back because it wants dveikus. That's the pshat. So it agrees to come down and knows that's the tachlis. But in order for it to achieve its purpose in this world, it's because it always has a rutzah, a yearning, to be a complete one with Ein Sof. And that guf is what allows it to be able to be present and do its work. Because if it gets too comfortable here, it can get lost. It gets assimilated. So there's always a yearning of ascending. And then there's shuv, and then there's the knowledge you come back. It's both. Tzaddik is also about karchat chai, verkehrt even more.
Why?
Rotzi has a rotzi to Ein Sof. Yeah,